Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all around the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, David Wood. We're here to talk about racism, ladies and gentlemen, and why it's stupid. Some of you don't think it's stupid. Prepare to be schooled by this expert squad we have here. All right, let's go around the room here. First of all, we have John McCray.
Yo, whatever, everybody.
Hey, John, I noticed you're black.
Yeah, I am black.
All right. That makes you an expert.
Yeah, that's right. I'm an expert on all things right and all things white.
Hey, John, you started moving all slow. You started moving all slow again as soon as Vocab messed with everything and started sharing screens and stuff.
Oh man.
We'll see if that changes up in a little bit. All right. Then we have Vocab Malone. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, Vocab?
What's up, yo? Well, my name is Vocab, and I look how I look because I'm part Sicilian. And growing up, that gave me a very interesting background.
You look like a dork because you're part Sicilian? That's messed up.
Yeah. You know, whenever I hear a comment like that, I always go up to the person and I hug them because I know it's very difficult to go through life visually impaired.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, and we have Adam Coleman from the Tru-ID Apologetics channel. Tell everyone.
Hey, what up? What up?
Introduce yourself a little, Adam.
Hey, y'all know what it is, man. Your hometown hero, the real Adam Coleman. You know what I'm saying? John McCray speaks for all black people, but I'm like the vice expert. You know what I'm saying? I'm second in command, bro. So I'm following your lead, John. I got you, bro.
All right. Now, the reason we sort of put together this live stream was Adam and Vocab and John all posted a video about Nick Cannon and the things he was saying in his I guess that live stream that he did, or that wasn't even, I don't even think that was live. The podcast that was recorded was like from a year ago or something like that. But they all posted a video on it, and I said, gosh, you guys all posted a video on it. We should just go live and talk about some of this stuff. So we're going to be talking about Nick Cannon. We'll be talking about some of the other issues like, the Redskins renaming their team, Land O'Lakes, tearing down Confederate statues, just to get everyone's thoughts. So we'll be sharing our views on those issues, and you guys in the chat can share your comments on these as we're going along, and maybe we'll pull up some comments and discuss them. But who wants to talk about? Well, first of all, on the issue of racism, it seems like there are kind of two extremes. There's people who say that there just is no racism, or that it's completely insignificant, it doesn't affect anyone's life. And then on the other extreme, you have people who just kind of see it everywhere, like everything is racist. Everything you see all around you is racist. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the first question is going to be like, what is racism? Because whenever I'm talking about racism, I realize that everybody's always on different pages when it comes to what racism is. So some people define racism as just prejudice against like another person's skin, or feeling superior to another race based or to another person based on their skin color. And some people define it as prejudice plus power, which is kind of a more common definition a lot of times. Like it's actually a scholarly definition in some circles. So it's like you have to have prejudice and power in order to be racist, which is why some people will say that black people can't be racist, only white people can be racist. So you get into all that and stuff. But I think, I think the first step is understanding what racism is. Then is racism towards people, or is there institutional racism? Is there a racism on an individual level, or is there institutional racism? So I think understanding those things usually help the conversation go forward.
Yeah, and so one, there is what do we mean by racism, and then there's another issue, namely that there are degrees, right? There's, hey, my race is superior over yours, and you need to be subjugated to me. And then there's, there are shades all the way down on that. There's, hey, I don't have any problem with you, but you ain't gonna be marrying my daughter or something like that. You have different degrees. Adam, what are your thoughts here?
Well, yeah, I think what you guys are hitting on really taps into what I believe is probably the biggest problem that we're seeing within the church, and why a lot of conversations amongst believers don't really go anywhere, is because I think that we're allowing people out in the world to define and frame these issues, and then we're trying to address them from a biblical lens rather than starting from biblical axioms in terms of, what's going on in the world and building from there. I'm saying, so you got all these people who have these, we're letting sociologists, economists, and everybody else kind of tell us what's going on, rather than saying, okay, well, let's start from the biblical worldview. What does it look like to value somebody else based on, them being made in the image of God? What does it look like for somebody to divert from that? And then kind of, start from those kind of biblical axioms and figure out what's going on. So I agree with John. I think that there's a lot of, different ways that people use the term racism. And it's like, it kind of gets jacked up. And I mean, to your point, I say it all the time, like, just because you're not like riding around on a horse, burning crosses in somebody's yard, doesn't mean you're not a racist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that people think racism, they think, okay, well, I'm not Bull Connor, therefore I'm not a racist. Whereas you can still have your, ideas and thoughts, stained with racism, and just not be, maybe malicious in that sense, or something like that. So yeah, there's like these different degrees that, because people aren't taking those things into account, we just end up talking past each other a lot of the time.
Yeah, Hindu historian just commented, my aunt and uncle didn't even attend my cousin's wedding just because the groom was black. Now, hey, Hindu historian, are these Indians? And I mean Indian, not like Native American Indian. So Hindu.
So we're going to talk about the Washington, Redskins in a minute, man. You're already messing up,
yeah,
bro. Come on, man.
We have comments on that. So Wade Wilson here said, "I'm Native American. The Redskins were warriors. That is admiration. It wasn't racist." And that's one of the things we're actually going to be talking about here in a few minutes. Is that that team was named the Redskins because people pick warrior names for their teams. It's like the Vikings or the Trojans or the Spartans or something like that. Nevertheless, the term Redskin, even though, and again we'll be talking about this, the term Redskin originally was just, there was black skin, white skin, Redskin. In order, they didn't use technical terms to apply to the different races. They just referred to even Native Americans, at least in some areas, would refer to themselves as red. And so wasn't originally, a derogatory term, but it kind of took on derogatory connotations over time. And so now we're in a situation where a lot of people do find it a derogatory term. And so what do you do? What do you do? So couple issues. One, is it racist or is it derogatory? And two, given that that's how it is used now, what do you do about it? What do you do about past, things that were named in the past? Do you change them now? So we're going to be talking about that here in a minute. Vocab, what are your thoughts on what we were just talking about before we jump into some specifics here?
I would think racism is a violation or a committal of the sin of impartiality, and the sin of partiality, wherein you make some kind of partial judgment based upon some kind of external factor in which one person, for whatever reason, is determined to have more worth or value than the other. A great place, of course, in Scripture you see this laid out is in James. And I think I said sin of impartiality. It's the other way. It's sin of partiality, because you're showing partiality based upon that. I think Paul's instructions in Philippians 2:3 are equally applicable to this. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, let each of you regard one another as more important than himself. So the biblical perspective is literally the opposite. And I got a good quote here from a commentator that says this on Philippians 2:3. If anything in our whole life is difficult, this above everything else is so. Hence, it is not to be wondered if humility is so rare a virtue. So it's an undue pride in something about yourself versus over and against someone else. For as one says, everyone has in himself the mind of a king, by claiming everything for himself. See, here is pride. Afterwards, from a foolish admiration of ourselves arises contempt of the brethren. So I like that phrase, though. We have a foolish admiration of ourselves. And last part of this quote I'm going to read. And so far are we from what Paul here enjoins, that one can hardly endure that others should be on a level with him, for there is no one that is not eager to have superiority. And that's the end of that quote. And the commentator that I quote there from is John Calvin on his commentary to Philippians. So I wanted to start off in a very strong way.
No,
so
you bringing it up. You wanted to start off by pushing your Calvinism on everybody.
Well, of course, because that's the only true superiority, that Calvinist Christians are superior to all others. That's the only true, justifiably biblical superiority. But
Vocab likes that man-centered doctrine, huh?
With bringing that up, well, I think
Christianity didn't exist until Calvin came along. Go ahead.
Only one of us quoted the Bible. And so, bringing it back it's the sin of partiality based on ethnicity. It's a sin of partiality based on sort of a tribalism writ large. And so, therefore, it is a sin.
You know what? Actually, I do want to add on to that, though. So I think one thing that this kind of brings up an important point, I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but I guess one of my kind of pet peeves is I think that this concept of racism, I think it has what we can call essential properties to it, and then you have some properties that I think aren't essential. And so what I mean by that is I think you've got to have some sort of, like you said, partiality going on. There's going to be some level of just being unloving towards somebody on the basis of race. I think those things are fundamental to being, a racist or exercising racism. With that being said, I think some other aspects of I don't think you necessarily have to see yourself as being actually superior to somebody else in order to be a racist. I don't think that's an essential property. I know someone would disagree with that. Or I don't think you actually have to hate somebody in order to be a racist. You could not have some sort of emotive disposition towards somebody and yet still believe, some things that are erroneous about that person on the basis of race. Or about the superiority, you might not think that black people are, or what some other race is ontologically lower than you, but you might just not like them. I'm saying for some, on some other basis. I'm saying that. So I think that sometimes, what muddies the waters about discussing race is that people make certain things that, at least in my view, I understand everybody wouldn't agree, but they make things that aren't necessarily essential properties of racism an essential property.
Yeah,
that sounds like muddy in the water.
Yeah,
me.
You have
Right?
you have groups that are you have white separatists or white nationalists who believe that white people are superior and therefore need to be isolated so that their gene pool isn't polluted by inferior races. You also apparently have black separatists who believe that that blacks need their own area, and so that they're not polluted by inferior genes. But you also have, I've seen people who aren't thinking in terms of this group is superior to that group. They're thinking almost along the lines of aesthetic terms, you have these different groups, and if you mix them all together, then you don't have the different groups, right? And so you need to preserve all these different groups, otherwise everything just gets mixed together, and everyone loses their identity. So I've seen those people, but what stands out more are the ones who say that this group is actually better, and therefore we can't have our gene pool tainted by other people. Like I get that. My wife is half Asian, and I've actually gotten messages, David, you're a disgrace to the white race because your wife is half Asian. It's but what I want to point out here is how everyone's kind of I feel like everyone's being manipulated on this, because if you are some sort of separatist or racist, this is kind of your last stand right now. Because if you look at the change that's been taking place, you go to our grandparents' generation, and it was illegal in the United States to marry someone from another race. That law eventually changed. That's why my wife's parents were able to get married. They were able to get married because they changed the law, and then a white man could marry an Asian woman. So they got married, and now they had two daughters. One daughter married me. The other daughter, so my wife's sister, she married a man who's half black and half white. So his dad is black and his mother's white. And so anyway, the point here is just the generation of our grandparents, it was illegal to marry someone of another race. You get down to the grandchildren of that generation, and now you've got three different races at the family cookout, right? You've got black, white, Asian all at the same family cookout. That's how rapidly this has taken place. So if you are some sort of separatist or some sort of racial nationalist or something like that, you understand 30, 40 years from now, everything's going to be so mixed up, it's going to be impossible to make your case for some sort of, splitting everyone up after that, right? You're going to 50, 60% of the population that's being born are going to be mixed. And so it's kind of now or never. And so you have to make race the essential issue of this time in order to kind of push this. And so the point is, there are all kinds of different voices here. Some people have good motivations in pushing this issue, and some people not good motivations. All right.
You know what's interesting about that, though? I just kind of throw a little nugget in there. Actually, I don't know if I have the book with me right now, but Frederick Douglass, in one of his later speeches, like, a lot of people don't really talk about it, but in one of his later speeches, he was answering the question of what is the future for the black race. And interestingly enough, it's not even a long speech. It's relatively short. And he actually makes the same argument that you did, is that really the question is in some sense irrelevant, because in a relatively short time, according to him, there really won't be any black or white race, because the two races will end up mixing. And it's very interesting. He said that it's basically going to be like how the Phoenicians were. Now, I don't know if this is actually the case, but he depicted the Phoenicians as being some sort of like a mixture between different races in ancient times. And he was saying that here in America, that he believed it was going to be the same way. And that would actually be end up being the resolution of the whole race problem, so to speak, overall. And I guess in some ways he kind of looked to himself, because he was half black and half white as well. And later on in life, he actually ended up marrying a white woman. It was his second wife was white. But, I just think it's kind of interesting, to your point. It's been a relatively short time that that interracial marriage has been legal. As a matter of fact, I went to school with the grandson of the Lovings. Now, the Lovings was that Supreme Court case where you had the white man, the black woman who got married, and so on and so forth. I actually went to school, to high school with their grandson. Mm-hmm. We used to call him Snoop because he kind of looked like Snoop Dogg. You know what I'm saying? So, but I just said that to say it wasn't that long ago. You know what I'm saying? I went to school with that kid. You know what I'm saying?
Well, my grandma is white. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but I have a white grandma who's actually British. My dad is from London, right? And so, like, there's all kinds of stories about how hard it was to, like, coming to America and stuff like this during the race, and then they finally got married and stuff too. And I got a lot of stories from, like, my family and all the segregation and stuff. Even my mom grew up my mom's family's from Louisiana, and then all the separation there and stuff. So yeah, it hasn't been that long. 1960s wasn't even that long. You know what I mean? When a lot of this stuff was, when Martin Luther King and all that too. So yeah, it hasn't been that long, but yeah, let's just keep going because I don't want to slow it down.
All right. So we sort of decided to have this live stream because everyone was posting a video about Nick Cannon. Now, guys, I have to ask here. All three of you jumped on the black guy as soon as he said something racist. Huh? Now, what is that? Is that not itself a kind of racism?
Yeah.
Yeah. Speechless, busted. I'm about to block y'all now. about to turn off Skype.
I'm gonna be upfront, man. I'm gonna be upfront and tell you exactly why I did the video, because for me it's a matter of consistency. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think people, for me, I don't want to have a platform where people are watching me and I'm either being hypocritical or just inconsistent. So for me, if I see something, I'm gonna call it out. I don't care if the person's black, white, green, or whatever. It's all about consistency. You know what I'm saying? And I think that what we see in the public square, and I'm not calling anybody out by name, but I think what we tend to see is that individuals feel more comfortable calling people out who aren't so-called on their team. Mm-hmm. They want to call somebody else out on somebody else's team. But as Christians, I think that, going back to, vocab, we don't want to be exhibiting partiality. You know what I'm saying? We got to call a spade and let that be what it is. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I'm very serious about, like, I want the black community to do well. I'm saying this is the context that God has sovereignly placed me in, and I don't want black people imbibing ideas that are harmful, because ultimately it'll destroy the community. So when I see influencers or intellectuals who are pushing certain ideas to the black community that are ultimately destructive, I'm against it. I'm saying adamantly.
Here's someone in the live chat on that. It says, racism nowadays is a black thing.
Yeah, yeah, John and Adam. What's up there?
Well, here's the thing.
Why you guys hating on me and Vocab?
It's a real comment here in the live chat.
I'm logging off right now with these,
Yeah, and people disagree with me on this, but like the way I understand racism, or the way that I conceptualize it, just as a very practical level, is feeling superior to another person and not liking that person based off of their skin tone. And I know that's probably not a sufficient definition for some people, but if that's the case, yeah, I think that racism goes both ways. But some people disagree with me on the view of racism. They think you have to have this power and all this to enforce racism. I think that definition gets circular and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say that, yeah, there are black racists. I think that I know black racists. You know what I mean? And so I'd say that you can be black and racist, white racist, doesn't really matter. And I agree that pushing a lot of the narrative sometimes, if we were being consistent, then yeah, it looks really racist unless you have some sort of definition that might appear ad hoc or might be a different kind of definition to excuse it. But yeah, you see a lot of that.
Yeah, guys, that might be a helpful video by someone here. It's probably already been done, but it really hasn't been popularized. But come out with like 4 or 5 names for different kinds of racism so that people know what you're talking about. Because if the problem here is equivocation, right, that people are changing the meaning of the term depending on the conversation, then it makes sense for someone to say, oh, he's a racist, and then someone to say, what are you talking about? That person is not a racist because that person blah 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 blah. And so if we come up with different words, this is a such and such race, a type 1 racist, a type 2 racist, a type 3 racist, a type 4 racist. This person is not a type 1, 2, or 3 racist, but he is a type 4 racist or something like that, and then explain exactly what is meant. That might
it's like that video you did with the cops, where you kind of describe the different
you got different kinds of cops, man. You got those, right. Yeah, you got those.
I mean, and to John's point, I mean, I agree. I think I understand why the kind of the prejudice plus power definition is kind of grabbing hold today, because I mean you do find it in the literature, but at the same time I think that our definitions and concepts should, as best we can, describe the things that we're pointing to. And I don't think that the prejudice plus power concept really describes what it is that most people are pointing to when they talk about racism. Mm-hmm. I think most people, when they're talking about racism, it does have to do with somebody's personal inclinations or one way or the other. And if that's the case, then any individual, any person could be racist. You know what I'm saying? Now, with that being said, actually in the title of my video about Nick Cannon, I use the term, rather than saying racist comments, I said racially bigoted comments, because I just didn't feel like having to deal with going back and forth with people on whether something was racist or not. So I use the term racially bigoted, just to kind of get around that. But yeah, I agree.
Okay, so sort of to start getting in on some of the specifics we want to address, who wants to tell us basically what Nick? John, do you have something on? Can you pull up something on the claims that Nick Cannon made? Just a couple of quotations for him, and then Vocab, you made a video sort of going through where he's getting this stuff from. So maybe, and then Adam, you can follow up with Vocab on where some of these ideas are coming from. John, you got some stuff there?
Yeah, it's hard to find articles with a lot of quotes. There was an article though from the Daily Wire that had like a lot of kind of partial quotes and stuff, and I can just look at a few things. But the article is called Nick Cannon, "White People Are a Little Less, Closer to Animals, True Savages." I just pulled out those. All right. So it says, speaking on an episode of Cannon's Class, the television host argued that melanated people have a natural sense of compassion and soul that white people lack, creating jealousy and fear that causes them to act out in evil ways. Man, that's not entirely correct, but we can talk about that. It says, when we talk about the power of melanated people, he said on the program, melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black is because the lack that they have of it. So we can just stop there for now. You guys want to talk about that point?
So notice, one, the kind of scientific absurdity of saying that soul is contained in melanin, and therefore the more melanin you have, the more soul you have. Kind of a Like if you were to ask someone, go ahead and defend that, right? Go ahead and locate the soul part of the melanin, right? Like show us what experiments have confirmed that. I guess all you can say is, well, look, I'm assuming this is how he's thinking, right? Look at musicians and all of, come on, yeah, you guys got Eminem, but come on, right? Something.
Well, actually, I think he was associated with kind of like some sort of camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
I think, from what I recall, like, he was trying to attribute it to how we got love for one another. You know what I'm saying, as Black people. Which, listen, I try to keep it 100 in every show. I mean, I love my community. This is why God has sovereignly placed me. But I mean, let's be real. I've been held at gunpoint by other Black people. So I mean, I wasn't feeling the soul.
No, but that's a good point though. Because the reason why that's a good point is that's one thing that non-Blacks probably don't realize is that whenever you see a Black, this is what's cool about the Black community though, because whenever you see a Black person somewhere, you always say what's up to the other Black person, right? Yeah. It's like that, right? And so it's kind of cool, but it's funny because whenever I see white people, I'll go, and when I see Black people, I'll go. I don't know. No, but that is the thing though, is Black people, at least in the community, they feel like they're united by being Black in the struggle and all that or whatever. So that's where the community idea kind of comes from too. And so I think that's what he was kind of getting at too. But
let me jump in here if I may. So a few things. One is there's actually a whole grip of literature and YouTube videos that are all from a pseudoscientific perspective run around the internet and before that as well. Within the so-called conscious community. And I know personally a friend who went to Baruch College in New York who took a certain studies class, and the ISIS papers was assigned as part of his college reading. And the ISIS papers was quoted heavily in this discussion, and part of that is found in that book. And I want to actually read, I have the transcript in front of me, the specific part they're talking about, because it's important to understand it. And I mentioned this in my video, and I don't remember which parts you used, John, about this, but when we see centuries in Western context, and just can say in America context, focusing on that, centuries of white supremacists from subtle to overt ways through every facet of society, beating down on those and creating this hierarchy with WASPs at the top and those of African descent at the bottom. This is what's been hammered through thousands of different power structures, from the media to the economic system to where you're allowed to live. It's a long list to rules about politics, to certain crimes and their related infractions and punishments. Now, within all of that, you have the pendulum swinging the other way, and very rarely when you do that do you land in a place of balance. And so there's this reaction to that situation. So that's trying to have an empathetic view, I think, of the situation, of the kind of stuff that Griff and Cannon are saying, but not originating. They are repeating people prior to them. And a lot of what they're saying, people don't realize, is actually very, very common within these circles that they would listen to and in some cases traffic in. Now, I'm going to read the quote, and when you hear it, understand, and I got this from Nefertiti, so shout out to her, subscribe to her, but it's helpful if you understand they're essentially viewing melanin as a superpower. That's a kind of a quick way to understand it. Now, here's the quotes. So Cannon says this is 48 minutes and 18 seconds in. So then let's go to what it really is then. So he sees this as a part of the root issue, everyone. When we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as gods, and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So Adam mentioned some of that. Continue on. So then when you see what Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about, is that fear in that, and they kind of talk past each other at that point, the transcript has, and then Griff says, is genetic annihilation. And so understand, you have to understand the perspective of the community experiencing this stuff not just in their own lifetime, but when they hear their grandparents and great-grandparents, if they were fortunate enough to know them, speak, and when they read. So it's personal, it's public, it's every aspect of your existence, right? They're trying to essentially explain why have white folks been so evil to us? Because it seems inhuman, and indeed treated inhuman in many ways. And so what happens is it's almost like we need to explain how this could be. So it's almost like some kind of strange, not theodicy, but you understand what theodicy is. It's some kind of thing like that. And so different theories get postulated. And so this is a reaction to that, and this is one of them. So it's almost sympathetic in a weird way. White folks have acted this way because they're simply doing this to survive, because they know they will experience genetic annihilation if they don't do this. Now, this is the main quote I'm going to read, and then I'm going to pass it on. I just want to really get to the kind of the nitty-gritty of what they really said, right? When you'd have a person that has the lack of pigment, so I'm continuing quoting canon here, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion that melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul that we call it, we're soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm going to say this carefully, and I'm going to pause right there. I almost feel bad for Nick Cannon. The brother's about to say something wild, and he's like, I'm saying this real carefully right now. I'm going to say this real carefully, everyone. I'm treading easy. Now listen to what he says. And I'm going to say this carefully, or a little less. And where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion, or when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear. They're acting out of low self-esteem. They're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and fight. And then Griff says, fight or flight, okay? In order to survive. Cannon finishes the sentence. Now, understand, if you really paying attention to what's being said, there is some pseudoscience even in there. Just like Superman, as a native of Krypton, draws his power from Earth's sun, and that's why he's even able to resurrect after being killed by Doomsday, in essence. Similar with black folks and their relationship to the sun, and white folks don't have that relationship with the sun. So melanin has all kinds of advantages that you have to understand. Now, understand, I am speaking from their perspective. I'm not saying this is real. This is junk science. It's pseudoscience. There's all kind of mess-ups in this whole insane thing. If you want to really understand this in a 5-minute version, there's a rapper that was popular among the underground lyricists back in the day named Raz Kaz. Sometimes people call him Raz Kaz. R-A-S space K-A-S-S. He had a song called The Nature of... is a lyrical screed that embodies a lot of this and will help you understand this kind of idea. So, like, I was listening to Raz Kass way back in the day. My point by saying that is I was exposed to this kind of stuff almost all the way back in middle school. Not that I'm some expert, there's always some new popping off, but you kind of see this, and so that's part of what's going on. So I think it's helpful to try to have an empathetic view about why is someone talking this way. And before you get all wacky and wild, and because someone already said in the live chat, they're totally wrong. Racism nowadays is a black thing. It's so shocking to me somebody would say that. Like did they, I'm just going to mention one, but did they forget the very real issue of a man in Texas being dragged around in a truck until he disintegrated? Like, this is not the only example. I just named a particularly heinous one. Did they forget about that being specifically racially motivated? Then we could go on from there and backwards and forwards and look at all kind of examples. Like, what are they talking about? It wasn't long ago that white folks, to prop up their racial superiority, were delving into pseudoscience as well. Mm-hmm. The size of the cranium, for example, all kinds of reasons that they would give. And guess what? If you go on some of the Christian identity websites, KKK apologists, they still delve in this kind of thing today. So I said it wasn't long ago. It used to be more mainstream. We actually had evolutionary scientists jumping into this saying, well, look at this, right? But it still exists, albeit in a lesser known way. John McCray's disappeared, by the way.
Yeah, let's just see if we can hear him. Hey, John, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can see you guys.
We lost your video.
All right, I'll check it out.
He is the invisible man of the book.
What'd you say, John?
No, I said I'll try to figure it out real quick then. Get it back
Okay.
up.
I wanted to add
Should you
to
hang
the-
up and call back, or how's it work?
No, I'll hang on real quick. I'm gonna try to restart my video.
Okay.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead,
gonna
Adam.
say too, like, yeah, like I mean, and less people think that vocab is being extreme as far as describing it as a superpower. That's not an exaggeration. Like, I mean, folks who subscribe to this ideology. Now, granted, there's various different levels. That not everybody's a monolith. Even who, some people subscribe to the broader ideology, but maybe not some of the specifics. But if you listen to the end of, I think it was somewhere towards the end of this interview with Professor Griff. Professor Griff mentioned something about astral projection, and he associates that with melanism, being melanated. And so there's this idea that given the level of melanin that we have, we can, like our souls can leave our body and, travel and do all sorts of things. Some people even take it that, we can get in tune with the deepest parts of the universe and, and contact aliens in some cases. I mean, there's all different kinds of views associated with this melanin. Some folks will even, actually, I think that there was this one clip where Professor Griff said something about like picking your hair out or something like that. Now that might be getting two interviews mixed up, but some people believe that black people's hair is actually like an antenna, that is
no, he does. He does.
That was his interview.
Yes,
right?
yes, and he. I'm gonna totally let you finish. I'm sorry to Kanye West, Taylor Swift you, but it's exactly. He's talking about a brother who feels like he's in a messed up state of mind, and Griff is gonna bring him back to a proper point of balance. And he says something else too. There's a pick out your hair. He says something else physical, but I forget what it was. But it was this idea of sort of naturally relocating yourself as a person of African descent. That's kind of what he was essentially getting at. And right. So it was in this interview. So this is all very real connected. So it's directly related to perceived properties over and against others. And sort of the more you have of it, essentially the better off you are and will be, and the less you have of it, the worse off.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's what's interesting. So, I mean, to your point about Nick Cannon, I do think that, obviously he's done a lot of business with white people. I mean, his platform clearly, depends quite a bit on white folks. So, I mean, on this one hand, you see him kind of being pensive, kind of being hesitant about saying what he's about to say, and then he comes out and says, yeah, white people are those who lack melanin are a little less. But I find it interesting. He didn't say like a little less. What? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, a little less, on the human hierarchy. Like what does he really mean by that? I feel like he kind of left something out there, and it kind of really shows how uncomfortable he was. But there's like a couple, and I don't know if you have any clarity on this, vocab, but a lot of times what you'll see is these folks who say like white people came out of the Caucasus Mountains and and like he was describing with like these animalistic ancestors and so on.
Crawling on all fours.
Yeah, I mean a lot of that goes on, right? Mm-hmm. But one thing I thought he said it was interesting. He said when they were sent to the Caucasus Mountains.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
I banish you.
Right. I mean, I thought that was very interesting because normally, from what I've seen, I could be wrong, but normally I think that the idea is that white people either migrated from, migrated to.
They emerge. My thought is they emerge out of them while there's this state of black supremacy and pinnacle of civilization happening. White folks are not using anything proper hygiene, scratching each other's backs, eating their defecation, crawling on all fours, and they emerge out to see the sun and this massive black culture and realize, dang, Timmy, we better get on the ball or these folks are going to genetically annihilate us.
Timmy?
Yeah.
Neanderthal named Timmy. But here's what's interesting though. So now I'm trying to fill in the gaps, just trying to understand the moment, right? So what we have to know is that Professor Griff has strong leanings with the NOI. Strong leanings with the NOI. I mean, that's kind of his thing. Now I'm sure he's kind of eclectic. He's taking on other ideas, but along with that, the NOI has for a long time taught. And in my understanding, I think even Farrakhan still believes this, and what's called the Yakub theory. The Yakub theory is this idea that about 6,000 years ago, basically a mad scientist created white people.
Didn't that dude have two brains?
Yes, actually, I have heard that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's always present in the myth, but
that's the one I heard from the 5%ers in prison. That white man was created by grafting some stuff
that's the
from
word, right? Exactly right.
a two-brain scientist, and some would even say, some of them said that the white man was created by a two-brain scientist who grafted the skin of a pig.
Yeah. I mean, that's
to
true.
to create a white man.
I mean, 'cause
Adam
actually,
just said that's true. You just said that's true.
oh no, I mean, it's true that people,
Take that little clip right there. Adam's career as a Christian apologist is over.
I mean, it's
But
true.
the thing of
People said
the
it,
thing about all of it is that like it all boils down to truth, right? And that's why I like First John and stuff too, because he's always talking about like where we're kind of unified and stuff like this. We have fellowship with each other and God in truth, right? And so like that's the whole thing. Because what struck me kind of weird about the Nick Cannon thing, because he sounded like a lot of conspiracy theorists to me. Like a lot of conspiracy theorists kind of take the same path, but he actually was following the logic a little better. The thing that was wrong was all of his fundamental premises. You know what I mean? But if his fundamental premises were true, then you could get to those conclusions. But it's just so absurd because his foundations, his axioms were all out of whack, and absurd. So anyways, I think that's why we need to be lovers of truth as Christians.
1991, you had Farrakhan come out with a book, and I think it's like a trilogy at this point, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. And in 91, you had your guy. Well, actually, it came out before 91, but 91 is when it was known to a lot of media because that's when Ice Cube actually endorsed it. This is a little miniature refutation of the book series, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. But the reason why I bring this up is because if you listen to the entirety of the interview, Griff says, back in 89, I got an advance copy of the relationship, the secret relationship between blacks and Jews from the Nation of Islam, the research department, right? And what happens is he went to Kinko's and made some copies of it. And then he had an interview. And what happened is in that interview, he repeated a lot of the things out of this book. This is my general understanding of the timeline from what he said in the Cannon interview. In 1989, that got Griff kicked out of Public Enemy. Now, I mean, all due respect to Flavor Flav, but I think he's a crackhead, right? He's been kicked out of Public Enemy a whole bunch of times, and they keep on having him.
It's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking, wait, you keeping a crack?
Right.
You keeping a
right,
you're not just a crackhead. You're keeping a crackhead in a Viking helmet.
Right. That's what I was. But he knows what time it is. So he keeps on coming back in, but Griff is kicked out. He's never brought back in, right? Never at all. And so like you gotta kind of understand that the Public Enemy, Griff is gone forever from the stuff that he said that was anti-Semitic, in which in the interview he did say Jews are responsible for the majority of evil in the world. That's what he said, right? That's amongst other things in this 89. So it's ironic Griff is on with Cannon again now in the year 2020, and basically the same kind of thing happens. But Cannon has now repeated ideas that since then have been filtered down through the internet that are actually considered common wisdom amongst large components of the conscious community. That's what's so fascinating. So now Griff is like this guy back here with this pre-published book, right? Now in 2020, Nick Cannon's like talking stuff with Griff that he got from everywhere else on the internet. So we got to understand like kind of what's happening, what's going on. And so that's why their conversation is a massive mixture of syncretism of all these different alternative urban spiritualities, including Nation of Islam, including general ideas in the conscious community, comedic science, including some pseudoscience from pseudo academics as the ISIS papers, for example. I mentioned, they're assigned college reading in some places. And of course, Hebrew Israelism is in there as well.
You can even hear it at the end of the interview because Professor Griff said something like, I want to say Nick Cannon was thanking him for being on, and then Griff was like, "Nah, man, you was dropping jewels, man. You was dropping jewels." And I think that Griff was probably, I'm not trying to get too far into psychology, but I'm thinking he's probably thinking like, I don't know where the boundaries are. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I can say or what I can't say, And then so when Nick Cannon is just going in and calling white people animalistic savages, then Griff was like, "Oh, it's that kind of party, all right." You know what I mean? So I'm good. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of thinking that was the kind of vibe. But then interesting too, what I think is interesting about that is that you have these different reversals, if you will, packaged into Nick Cannon's statements. And what I mean by that is, so when he says, he didn't say, all right, white people are animalistic. He said white people are actually the ones who are animalistic. I'm saying so why did he phrase it that way? It's because for so long, going back to like Carl Linnaeus that I talked about like in my video that I dropped, you had the scientific racism that played a huge role in the perpetuation of the transatlantic slave trade, and part of that was this idea that black people were savages, they were animalistic, and so on and so forth. And that idea has been around. And so Nick Cannon said, no, actually, white people are the ones who are animalistic. You know what I'm saying? Again, going back in the day, it was this idea that Europeans were, I guess the originators of civilization and so on and so forth. But then Professor Gibbs says, no, it's actually black people.
It's all that flipped on its head.
Right.
I mean, it's funny, Adam. Listen, there's
very interesting.
Someone in the comment section, I think, that is repeating a version of that idea. Listen to this. Tell me what you think. Tony Hodge. Yep, Farrakhan is a fraud. Okay, we could agree on that part. I don't know about this part. Listen to this. Both the Sumerians and the Egyptians claim to have genetically modified whites, but they were unruly, problematic. Oh, wait, hold on. Is Tony Hodge saying? At first I was reading it like I thought the person was saying that the Egyptians were genetically modified whites, but here it makes it sound like Tony is saying even though Farrakhan's a fraud, it's still a fact that whites were genetically modified and unruly. Because after that it says, look up Tamahu. That's what they called the whites. Okay, so this person is actually repeating some of the ideas. So there's a pseudo history there as well.
Here's what's interesting. That must be a Kemetic, because the term Tamhu. You'll hear Brother Jabbar use that term a lot when they talk about white people. When he talks about white people, he'll use the term the Tamhu, and I think it means like the northern peoples or something like that. Oh, okay. But notice what he said is that these different cultures created white people, but they got unruly. And see, that's consistent with what Nick Cannon said about them being sent to the Caucasus Mountains. It's not that they just
go to your room.
You see what I'm saying? Like, and so
go to your room, little Timmy.
Apparently, this person in the chat is buying into the ideas that Nick Cannon was advancing. But I mean, this is obvious nonsense.
They put him on a racial timeout.
Oh, did they?
You know what I'm saying? Banished to the Caucasus Mountain.
Hang on.
Go to your room, little Timmy. Learn how to behave like the rest of us. Actually, this is all very true, though, because what the Nation of Islam says is actually sort of a reversal of the classic white man's burden. They think it's the job of the NOI to civilize society. And the most difficult creature of all to civilize? The devils. The white folks inherit by nature. And again, people have to understand where these things come from. That doesn't excuse how bad or backwards they are. It's helpful to understand how things arose. Because I see it's easy to have a simplistic view of stuff, right? I mean, it's very easy. But it's helpful to understand where ideas come from. And then you can understand why there's resonance with said ideas. This is very important in apologetics. So some people in the live chat understand you're like, well, let's just have this simplistic view. And I don't know about all this. And you're just not going to be a good apologist. That's cool. These conversations probably aren't for you because that's not really what I'm trying to do here.
I mean, it goes back to, I think John's point about there's some internal consistency in terms of what Nick Cannon is saying. Like, if his fundamental premises are true, then he's articulating something that's consistent with his premises. The problem is his fundamental ideas are false. You know what I'm saying? And therefore everything that follows from that is false. And that's apologetics, is pointing those kinds of things out.
And by the way, that's just how pseudoscience works, right? That's how pseudoscience really gets off the ground is, hey, I see this difference in, between these two things, right? So there's this group and there's that group, and I see some differences here. Now let me attribute it to this other thing. And if you agree with that, if you say, yes, that's the source, well, guess what? You've just explained the evidence in front of your eyes, and therefore you run out and you push that theory that supposedly explains things without really performing science, right? Without really performing some experiments to see if that actually is the explanation for things. All right, guys.
David, David, whenever we ban racist on the channel during today's chat, can we say, go to the caucus?
Yeah. You can banish. Yeah, you can banish racist to the caucus.
Whenever because I see one here right now. Nikki Mutak says the coming savior is all white. With fire your eyes. There are people literally repeating this stuff in the live chat like they believe it.
You're a mod dude. Do what you got to do. But you can, but make sure you use some cool echo effect or something like that. But actually, on that issue of like, and this ties in with Vocab a minute ago talking about a racial timeout. And then you have the issue of banning people and canceling people on this issue, right? So Nick Cannon said some messed up stuff, Right? He said some messed up, silly stuff. He talked about white people. He talked about Jews. And so the question is, once someone has done that, what do you do? Because the inclination whenever someone says something that's racist or racially bigoted or something like that, you just have to crush the person into silence, make sure the person gets fired from whatever his job is. And I kind of get that with someone who's like a public figure. Like, it's kind of hard to keep someone as, the host of your television show or something like that when, you're going to be getting all this negative feedback for that person. But, at the same time, I kind of think getting people fired and crushing them into silence doesn't change their views. It doesn't do anything to alter their views. It just forces them to be more careful and to keep things on the DL a little bit more. So I'd almost like to.
Nick Cannon's on the DL, man. Are you accusing him of being a down low, brother, man? Is that what
down low? Use it. I don't know how you use it. Back in the day, we just use it. You keep something quiet, man. You got to keep it quiet. Quit perverting everything, man. So perverted mind. Now check this out. So anyway, what I'm saying is when someone actually comes out with claims like that, before you try to crush that person and end his career and cancel him and he's just done, it's like I'd like to see a little window of time, right? Like, okay, Nick, we want you to. We're going to have like a public discussion of your views. We're going to bring in a couple of experts on this issue and people who've done research on this issue, and we're going to get you on stage with a couple different perspectives, and we're going to talk our way through these things. You're going to make your claims. You make any claim you want, and we're actually going to go through these things, and we're going to see if that's where the evidence actually points, so that people who are watching can make a better informed decision. And a less emotional decision. I'd much rather see that, but it just seems like, no, you have to crush everyone that you disagree with. And again, that doesn't change anyone's mind. If you were watching Nick Cannon and you said, I agree with everything this man says, and then you see people crush him, that's not a refutation of his claims. I mean, if he's claiming that the Jews control the media and then he criticized the Jews and then he gets crushed, that didn't change your mind. You're like, whoa, they got him. Whoa, they got him.
That's what Charlemagne said.
He's right.
Charlemagne said he can get canned as proof. The proof of what he said
right there.
is
So
it's true.
Yep.
Well, I mean, so I got a slightly different view on it, and I haven't really thought it all the way out. So I'm just going to throw it out there, and we can just kind of see what we think about it. But like, say, like capitalism, from a capitalistic standpoint, right? If you got two businesses that make widgets, and business B makes a better widget than business A, then the idea is that either business A has two options. I'm saying the more people in the market that are buying from business B, either business A can switch it up and make a better widget, or they can die out. And people are just not going to patronize them anymore. Now what if your widget is your persona, or is your ideas? I'm saying if you're a person who has a platform, and basically your business is to market yourself and your ideas, then in the market, if those ideas are not well received, if people don't want your ideas, then they're no longer gonna patronize you. You see what I'm saying? So like from a capitalistic standpoint, it's basically Nick Cannon calling people savages and so forth is the equivalent to business A making bad widgets. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, like, nobody's running around buying Daewoo's anymore. I'm saying, for a reason. You know what I'm saying?
Buying
so
what?
Exactly. I'm saying a Daewoo was a type of car like 15 some years ago. It was basically garbage. From my understanding, I don't think they exist.
Oh yeah. It's like jokes come out of that. Like, what's the difference between a Daewoo and a Jehovah's Witness? You can shut the door on a Jehovah's Witness.
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I think some people, like when we're talking about people who have public platforms, and if their ideas are not something that people want to consume any longer, then people will stop consuming them. In the same way that if McDonald's want to start, they're serving horsemen, I'm not gonna buy from them anymore. Mm-hmm. That's just one perspective.
I think the culture, that cancel culture idea, does actually stop people from being able to think things through, right? So that's what makes it a problem, is because like now people don't know how to think through any of these issues, because if they say something, they're just going to get shut down. And so if we did have an ability where people are allowed to say these things, and then they have the debate and the discussion, then people would actually be interested. So like you always have the fear of like, bad ideas winning, right? So like say Nick Cannon's idea is like taking traction, but the way to combat that is like if people are taking it seriously and they're emotionally invested, then you can have some really articulate responses, and then people can, you know, look for both sides. Because I don't mind when people say a bunch of stuff that I don't like, or say call me racist stuff or whatever like that. I'm more okay with it if we can have a conversation, you know what I mean, about it, because then I don't really mind, I don't really care, you know, in that sense. But the problem is if like, you know, I can't voice my views or they can't voice their views. It's like with Candace Owens and all that, like I did the video talking about it, I like the way she approaches stuff, but I'm happy that she gets to be able to do it, because then I can actually see both sides of it and then think it through for myself and see, okay, what do I align with? You know what I mean? So I think that's the beauty of free speech. You take that away, you got problems.
Yeah, guys. And so, yeah, I agree completely. What I think the issue is everyone thinks, oh, here are all these views I disagree with and we have to silence these people. But that's just forcing people to be so nervous about actually vocalizing what they believe that their ideas are no longer in the open marketplace where people can, you know, actually go through them, criticize them, and see if they stand up to scrutiny. So the idea is the more people are trying to cancel each other and the more fearful people are of subjecting their views to scrutiny, the more these radical ideas are going to be circulating, because you're just going to share them quietly. You're never going to subject them to open scrutiny or open public debate. And so you just keep them kind of quiet and form your little group, and you discuss them on platforms where no one can see what you're actually talking about and stuff like that. And then so they go without challenge. All right, so let's move on to a slightly a different topic here before we go into another couple of issues. Black Lives Matter. This ties in earlier to when we were talking about how racism is used equivocally, right? It can be used in different ways, and so people aren't sure when someone says, "Oh, that's racist." They don't even know what someone else is talking about, because that person might have a different view of racist and racism and things like that. But here's a perfect example of that. John Millick says, "Should I, as a white man, support Black Lives Matter? To be honest, I don't even know if I can consider myself white, since Eastern European isn't the same as Western European." So here's kind of a similar issue, namely Black Lives Matter can actually mean a couple of different things. So when we ask whether you should be supporting it, you should kind of be clear on what exactly which BLM you're talking about. So Adam, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, no, absolutely. I mean, I guess it depends on what the person means by, Black Lives Matter. Now, I will say that, the proposition, Black Lives Matter, I think obviously articulates
that's one meaning. That's one meaning. A proposition. Declaim Black Lives Matter. Yeah. Right.
Declaim Black Lives Matter is obviously, or I shouldn't say it's obviously, maybe it's not obvious to everybody, but it's objectively true that Black Lives Matter. And I think that people understand why, that notion has been articulated is because it to many of us in the Black community, it appears that some people don't believe that Black Lives Matter, and so we feel the need to make that known. Now, let me clarify something real quick. Well, actually, let me say this first. Let's distinguish that between the proposition and the organization Black Lives Matter, as in the Black Lives Matter movement that has the website, so on and so forth. Now, obviously, they were the ones that coined the phrase. Now, the Black Lives Matter movement, whether you're white, black, or whatever, I don't think anybody should support the organization. And the reason why I say that is I would challenge everybody in the chat right now. I'm gonna give you some homework, right? Go to the Black Lives Matter page, click on the What We Believe tab. You will see an affirmation of transgender. You'll see an affirmation of mothers.
We make space for transgender brothers and sisters participate and lead.
Now, here's what you won't see. You won't see not one thing amongst their what they believe about black fathers. Not a one. You won't see anything specifically affirming black males among their all the. And I want to say that the gender stuff is mentioned like 5 or 6 times throughout their tenets. Not one time did they affirm black fathers.
Oh wait!
I think it's very telling.
There is one way in which they would affirm
parents for
black fathers is if they transition.
Oh, well.
We are self-reflexive and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift black trans folk, especially black trans women who continue to be disproportionately impacted by trans antagonistic violence. So that'd be the one exception.
Right. There you go. So they're trying to dismantle, the systems of privilege, and it talks about undermining a so-called westernized
We
nuclear
disrupt
family,
the Western prescribed nuclear family structure.
i.e. mom and the dad, that sort of thing. So I'm just saying, for reasons like that, those are solid reasons, particularly as a Christian, why we ought not to find ourselves, collaborating deeply with the Black Lives Matter organization. Now, I will say this. Some people will take the extra step and say, well, because the organization is so heinous, therefore we ought not to utilize the hashtag Black Lives Matter or kind of take that angle. I would say this, at very least, for those who take that position, at least ask yourself the question, why is it that phrase has resonated with so many people of color? I'm saying, what is it about this term Black Lives Matter that has allowed for it to gain so much traction? Mm-hmm. Now we can argue some of that is right, George Soros, pumping money into the organization and advertising. But there's something about that phrase that really, resonates with people. Mm-hmm. And I think that if there's any reality to some conditions that give rise to people feeling that they need to assert that Black Lives Matter, then maybe we should pay attention to those things, regardless of what the organization is doing.
Yeah,
but white, black, whatever. I don't support. I don't rock with Black Lives Matter either.
Going back a little bit to what you said earlier, because this is something that's still a sticking point for a lot of people, and I'm saying that because I posted a video about how the organization is sort of taking advantage of people's feelings about this and using a slogan to use that for their political claims, which most of them have nothing to do with Black lives. But your point that about the proposition or the claim or the statement Black Lives Matter, I've seen people in the comments of that video that I made saying that if you say Black Lives Matter, you're saying they're interpreting it as only Black Lives Matter, which obviously isn't the claim. And so I responded to one. I was saying, if you look at like the Beatitudes and Jesus saying, blessed are the poor, blessed are the, if you're consistent, then when Jesus says, blessed are the poor, you would have jumped in on him and said, no, wrong, Jesus. Now you're just saying only the poor are blessed. And you're saying that other people aren't blessed. Whereas what Jesus was saying is, guys, you think that you're not blessed. you think that your group is not blessed because look, these other people are rich and they have all the money and life is easier for them and life is hard for you. Blessed are the poor. You're blessed, but it's going to be in a different way. And so you're blessed too. You're not blessed in the exact same way as everyone else, but you're blessed too. So on the meaning of Black Lives Matter, is that which is funny because I've never once interpreted it as only Black Lives Matter, but there are people over and over and over again. You're saying only Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's obviously silly. I mean, it's not nobody's saying Black Lives Matter only. It's Black Lives Matter.
The only group that I know is the Hebrew Israelites, the one Westers.
Fair enough.
That's it. But they're not representative because they're also not big fans of it. But I mean, the reason is for hundreds of years in American society, it's just a fact. Through multiple systems and structures, it's been said Black lives don't matter, or they don't matter as much, or they matter less. For example, you can kill black folks and not be prosecuted. Cops can do it, and these are just realities. Children can get it too. I mean, you can be married, and we can just rip apart your family structure. So, I'm glad people are against the destruction of the nuclear family on the BLM website, but they need to make sure, remember, the white supremacist structure of American slavery said, oh, I'm going to sell you down the river. I don't care if that's your husband or wife. It was destructive to the nuclear family by the very fact of what it was. Right. And so we need to make sure. So that's why the phrase became important because of the fact of everything prior, but no one except for maybe one Westers is saying they're the only lives that matter. It's just
this is where it gets really weird is because when I think about Black Lives Matter or whatever, you think about like what are they fighting for, right? And it all started with like the cops, with the George Floyd. Not this time is George Floyd though, and all these other, it's related to the police brutality. But if we do have statistics and stuff that don't support that narrative, then again, all of these things are based on misinformation, and so that's what I mean. And I'm not saying that there's not, like prejudice against blacks or whatever like that. But I think that it's again about that truth, that foundation, because the whole nation believes that blacks are killed at a disproportional race right now, right? I mean, a disproportional rate than white people by police officers. And they think that's what the cause of, this is the reason for the movement. But if that's not even a fact, everything built off of there is just like, it gets so sloppy here because everybody's hearing these different things and different people are pushing their narratives through Black Lives Matter. And so we have all of these different views and stuff like that. And so that's why I think truth at its foundation needs to be important. But real quick, because I'm actually, I've got to get off of here. I got to run. But anyways, real quick, I did want to say, though, like when it comes to this separatism and all this other stuff, I really think that the axioms and stuff that we do build these beliefs off of is going to be that if we're all one in Christ, we don't identify so strongly with our race, right? Because that would mean our identity is higher than that of Christ, And so that's what I think is the core problem with a lot of this stuff, is that we want to find value in these other things so that way we can feel better about ourselves and feel superior to other people. But Christianity really cuts away at that over and over again, because we all are Jews that we've been adopted into that family in that sense biblically. So that's all I wanted to say. So thanks, guys.
You got to cut out now, man.
Got to cut out.
All right.
You guys keep it rocking.
Cut out, and then I'll see what the camera looks like.
Peace.
All right, man.
Yeah, thanks.
John, man, he's never even been to Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, to his point, I think one of the things that's unfortunate is that I almost think that, and I'm going to intentionally misuse the term. I almost think that the phrase Black Lives Matter is a misnomer. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say that you have an incident where a black man is pulled over by a police officer and, is like cussed out for no reason, right? That's probably not going to make the nightly news. A black man cussed out by a police officer, right? For being black or something like that. What would make the news is if a black man is shot, by a police officer, right? And so I think that when I think about like the police, the issue of police brutality, I don't think that most people, including Black Lives Matter, are really saying that one aspect is the real issue. I think it's just something that represents a larger problem. You know what I'm saying? And so it points to something more broad, i.e. that there's this narrative present. They would say amongst police officers, but not just that. I mean, you think about the Trayvon Martin case and or the Ahmaud Arbery case. I mean, those weren't officers, at that point. But just there's this narrative where black people are devalued, and it's almost like Martin Luther King said, is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like when I think about the Holocaust, for example. Hitler didn't just wake up one morning and say, "Hey, we're just going to gas all these Jews." He didn't just kind of pull it out of thin air. By the time Hitler brings about his so-called final solution, there had already been decades of, denigrating the Jewish that were among them. I'm saying going back to World War I, there had already been these Darwinist ideas about the impurity of the Jews and other races and the superiority of the Aryans. And so, in a sense, by the time Hitler comes along with the Holocaust and that final solution, the pump had already been primed amongst the German populace, through negative narratives about dehumanizing narratives about the Jews in order to make that possible. And so likewise, when it comes to the notion of what is the value of African American lives, of black lives, if you have erroneous narratives in respect to that, then you do have a bigger danger than any one incident. And I think that's kind of where people are trying to get to. However, to be honest, I think most Black Lives Matter folks, they don't articulate their position well enough to make that clear. I mean, at least from what I've seen. So, yeah.
Oh, boy.
What's up?
I don't know. I keep on debating if I should read some of these comments. Check this out.
We can read some comments real quick.
Listen to listen, Adam. Listen to this, David.
Uh-oh.
The disparity in deaths by police are largely caused by socioeconomic disparities, and you can't explain them without IQ gaps between ethnic groups.
You cannot?
Yeah, you can't explain. He's saying you can't explain the economic disparities without explaining IQ gaps between ethnic groups, and that leads to more people getting shot by cops. So, short version is, y'all getting killed by the cops because y'all stupid. That's basically what he's. That's basically what he's
probably
trying to say.
to the bell curve. Now, so that was a paper that came out actually not all that long ago. But the bell curve was this idea that you do have these IQ disparities between races, and draw some delineations there. Now, here's what's interesting about this, though. Here's where I think it does get interesting, because a lot of times when we're talking about these things, people say things like, well, what about black on black crime, or what about criminality among black people, things like that. And one thing I do argue is that there's more going on with crime and criminality than race. I'm saying if you're going to say, well, if you say what about black on black crime, then you're just telling me who's doing the crimes. You're not telling me about why. I do think that socioeconomics come into play. I do think that
no question
the literature points to. Yeah, exactly. Obviously,
I grew up in a, as everyone knows, I grew up in a West Virginia trailer park. There was not one of us kids in there who were not stealing, breaking into stuff. We were all doing it. It was normal. That's how you grow up. That's what all your friends are doing.
On my paper route, and I lived in a poor part of town. A lot of transplanted folks from the Appalachian area who lived in this area, and then it was surrounded by black neighborhoods. So it's kind of an interesting situation there, right? But I on my paper route, I had one trailer park, right? And, you're delivering your papers. The only place where I had to regularly deal with neighbors stealing the papers off another neighbor's front porch was in the trailer park. And the trailer park, they're always stealing each other's papers. It was like whoever woke up first.
Bro, that is a white crime right there, man. I never saw that. I don't think that's happening in the black community. I don't think there's a rash of newspapers on the black community.
Well, I would go into I'd knock on the trailer park door. Come on in. And I didn't really want to come in because they're small and they smell, right? But I got to come in to get my money, right?
Let's stop being racist. Stop being racist.
I'm just
stop being racist against the trailer park, man.
I'm just telling you, these particular ones, okay, it's a fact. And so I go in there and like, now I'm not paying because I haven't got my paper 3 out of 4 weeks. Well, I know I delivered it, sir, right there. And so now they're not paying. So I got to get the manager involved. We do an investigation. Well, I figured out what it was. My neighbor, I make more on my income tax. I pay more on my income taxes than he makes all year. That's why he's stealing my paper. I remember this.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so poverty has. Now, here's what's interesting. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. This. I know some people are gonna disagree with this, and they're not gonna like it. But I think that there's, and I'm just trying to be fair. I'm just trying to keep it 100. I believe that there is still a significant race problem today. However, I do think that people on that who fall on my side of the conversation and agree with me on that typically do a poor job at accounting for other contributing factors that have to do with why things are the way they are right now. In other words, everything is not racism. Some things that we see in our communities have to do with economics and poverty, right? I really want people to think about this, right? We typically think about like so. Let me ask you this question, right? Watch this. So David and Vocab, why are people poor, right? Why does poverty exist? What do y'all think?
A bunch of reasons.
Sure.
A bunch of them.
Yeah, I mean, there is systemic injustice, and the Bible speaks about this in the Minor Prophets. So Micah, for example, goes after the rich because they're specifically ripping off the poor. So that's one reason. But then you have Proverbs speaking about poverty come upon lazy, sleepy people.
Right.
The book of Proverbs diagnoses part of the problem is the lazy fool template. So they turn around, they sleeping, they ain't getting up, they ain't doing nothing. The next thing you know, they ain't got no food in the winter. So there's a variety. Those are just two examples. But I'm showing the biblical model there.
Good. Now here's the thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, what is our theology on poverty, right? Because ultimately, poverty you don't see it in the garden. You definitely don't see it in the eschaton after Jesus comes back. It's a product of the fall, right? But what happens is we're all dealing with this product of the fall, and somebody on the conservative side of the house says, no, the reason why you're poor is because you're lazy, you ain't doing nothing, if you don't work, you don't eat, and so on and so forth. Somebody on the left says, no, the reason why we're poor is because, these crummy bureaucrats and corporations are screwing up the tax code and getting their unfair share. And so now they're taking these man-centered understandings of poverty, and they're both trying to manage, poverty from an incomplete picture of what poverty is. But the Bible tells us exactly what's going on with poverty. It's a product of the fall. And what you see in Israel, for example, you see that the Boazes of the world, they had to abide by the gleaning laws. They had to leave a certain amount of their crops aside for those who couldn't eat. Those who were poor, you still had to work. And if you was owed somebody, you might have to be a servant, a slave, essentially, in order to work it off. Both sides are covered. But what we see in society is, the issue of poverty is being mishandled because people are taking a man-centered approach to it. Now, here's what ends up happening. poverty is allowed to flourish within our society, and it breeds a number of different problems, i.e. fatherlessness in certain communities, i.e. crime in certain communities, and so on and so forth, all because we're mishandling this issue of poverty. So that is not necessarily something that's race or racism specific. That's a whole ball of wax that's contributing to why things are the way they are, aside from race. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, we have to do a better job at taking a step back and seeing everything that's going on and not attributing everything to race. But then when racism, does raise its ugly head, we need, we do need to address it. But I said all that to say these conversations are way more complicated than what can be accomplished in a bunch of sound bites between, Candace Owens and whoever the representative is on the right. I guess Ben Shapiro or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, these conversations, need to happen in more robust ways than I think most people are maybe accustomed to having.
Let me comment on that because I love Ben Shapiro videos and stuff, but when he's talking about this, I'm saying, because I'm reading a comment here. So here's James Allman. He says they don't graduate high school and they come from broken homes. If you don't want to live in poverty, don't have kids out of wedlock and graduate high school. So that's
Thomas Sowell.
And Ben Shapiro says the same thing. He says, look, if you make bad decisions and you don't, you make bad decisions with your money and you get married you have kids out of wedlock and stuff like that, you got a recipe there for being poor. So I listen to that and I go, it's right. This is the United States of America. Seems like if you work hard enough, you can get out of poverty. And I'm thinking from personal experience, I got out of prison, convicted violent felon. What the heck am I going to do? I know what it's like to fill out those job applications. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? If so, please explain. I know what that's like. And yet it occurred to me, no, I can work myself to death. I can sleepless nights, outpacing everyone else. And I can still do what I want in life, and that has worked out. And so it's kind of easy to look at that and go, no, this is the United States, man. If you work hard, you can be successful. At the same time, given where I came from, it's very, very easy to say, don't have kids out of wedlock, guys. The people who are having kids out of wedlock. My mom was 15 years old when she got pregnant with me. These are not people who are making fully informed decisions about life, and it's not taking that into account. Well, you did a dumb thing. Well, great. You did something, you got pregnant when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, and we don't want the person to abort that. But it's easy to sit there and look, you shouldn't have made that dumb decision. Guess what? We're human beings. We're going to make dumb decisions, right? Mm-hmm. How do you move on? Well, here's the thing. My mom, she didn't graduate high school. There were drugs all over the place. She starts on this path when she's 13, 14, 15 years old. She really never gets out of it. She really never gets out of that pattern, because notice, now you've got a kid. Now you have to be working. You don't finish school. Now for the rest of your life, you don't have a degree. You can in theory go back and do something about that, but you're working yourself to death as a single mom in a trailer park trying to take care of your kids, and the only job you can get is as a bartender. And so it's easy to say, well, just make good decisions. But you a lot of people get locked into a pattern of living. And I'm saying this because I'm not just talking about my mom. Everyone is like that. Everyone is like that where I grew up. Everyone is having kids when they're 15, 16 years old. They get locked into it. They get a job wherever they can find it. They get a job at, Burger King and stuff like that. If you're lucky, you get a job in the coal mines, but you end up, this is, it's easy to say, just go off to college and get this awesome career and stuff like these people are, once they've started when they're 13 or 14 years old, they're never in that position again. They're never in a position to say, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to have this awesome career and I'm going to go off. Some of them are, but it's easier to say from outside, from a position of success where you never had to go through that. And you can look back and say, well, you should have, you should have made great decisions when you're 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. Well, great. Yeah, you should have. You should have made great decisions when you're 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. But in general, 13, 14, 15, 16 year old kids are not going to make great decisions, especially if they grow up in an atmosphere where everyone's making bad decisions. And so it's
here's what's interesting about what you said though. Now I'm going to preface this by saying I can't get into it all now, but I think part of the problem is that we're victims of Western individualism, which is totally unbiblical, and I could maybe explain what I mean by that later. But the whole thing is this: is that, put it this way, there's a difference between possibilities and probabilities, right?
Yeah.
It's possible that anybody in America can work hard and be balling out of control. That's possible. But here's the thing, what's probable? What's most likely going to be the case? I'm saying for somebody in a particular context to be successful. Now, here's the thing. If there are things that shape those probabilities that are unjust, if there are external factors that shape those probabilities that maybe flow from the sinfulness of those who maybe have a particular power, have power in some sense or whatever, if those probabilities are shaped by something unjust, then just people who are about righteousness, ought to look into those matters and see how we can reshape those probabilities that make it more probable then that somebody can, work their way up and do whatever it is they need to do. But I think the problem is that we've got a totally unbiblical understanding of what our obligation is to other people within our society. I'm saying, like, if you look at the Bible, just real quick, like the Good Samaritan, you know what I'm saying? Like when Jesus talks about, loving others as you love yourself, loving your neighbor rather, you have the teacher that's like, well, yeah, who's my neighbor? Right. And then Jesus tells a story about the Good Samaritan and, the man who was, fell among thieves. The Samaritan stops and, make sure the dude's all right. And then at the end of the parable, Jesus asks a question. He actually flips. He says, OK, now who was a neighbor to the man who was alongside the road? Right. So, again, the teacher asks Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? And Jesus is like, no, you got it backwards. Who have you made yourself a neighbor to? That's the real question. That's how you live out the biblical ethic. And so the Good Samaritans stopped what they were doing and invested their time, energy, and resources into helping somebody else. Well, as Christians, we're supposed to be the same way. Love, that's what love looks like. We ought to be stopping our own agendas and attending to investing our time, energy, and resources into the well-being of others. Now, if we do that, now we've actually ventured beyond this sense of like Western individualism that I think that are all in some sense beholden to. That really flows out of the Enlightenment period. You know what I'm saying? We've actually gotten into the biblical ethic. And I think we'll see, greater outcomes for other people. We're not supposed to keep the brokenness of this world at arm's length. No, we're supposed to get our hands dirty and do something about it. That's the biblical ethic.
Yeah, and I want to. There's a couple things that I want to point out here. So, as I pointed out, a lot of this is kind of easier said than done. And I like your distinction between possibility and probability. Yeah, someone who grows up in a poor place and a messed up family can be a success. It happens. It happens. But probability wise, most of the kids I grew up with did not end up successful. They ended up having kids when they're young and working in order to take care of their kids. And you got to respect it, especially the ones that did the right thing and they put their kids first and they worked their butts off to take care of their kids. You got to respect them for that. But it's easy to say, well, if you just made smarter decisions when you're 15, 16 years old, you wouldn't have been in that position. That's true. But how do you ever move forward once you get into that position? And so that's kind of one thing. Here's the thing, though. When I think about what the message has to be to people in a poor community, the current message is you're being oppressed. You're being taken advantage of by rich people. Therefore, you need to go after all those rich people and make them hand over their money. It's their fault. And you look and you say, yeah, that guy has billions of dollars. Look at my mom. She works hard. And she can barely put food on the table. And so there's a tendency to blame those people when I'm thinking about what the message needs to be to people, it kind of has to be more on the Ben Shapiro side of things in terms of personal responsibility, in terms of it can't be you got taken advantage of by the system and now you're screwed unless you can bring down that entire system. Because guess what? Now you are stuck forever, right? You are stuck forever. If you ever do bring down that system, guess what? It didn't help you because those are the people who make the jobs. As far as people, the message has to be, dude, if you work hard enough, you can be more successful. It kind of has to be that because the sort of burden of personal responsibility needs to be on you that you can't be thinking all your life, I'm a victim of everyone else, and that's why I'm there. So I think that's the good part of Ben Shapiro's message. When I got out, it was not, oh, I'm such a victim here. I didn't have any sort of victim mentality because I'd done so much screwed up stuff that no. I put myself in this position. This is not people discriminating against me or something. Like, I put myself in this position because I was there, because I'd done horrible things. So it was okay, if that's a situation I'm in, then I mean, this is either the way things are and I'm stuck like this, or I just have to work hard enough to get out of it. So I'm thinking that has to be a big part of it. But as you know, going along the lines of what you're saying, let me just tell you another personal experience here. I got a job eventually teaching for a test prep company. So people who take the SAT and the GRE and these tests and stuff, I did really well on those standardized tests and got a job for a company that teaches, you know, high school students and college students how to take these tests. And so I was working for those companies, and I noticed very quickly, class after class, all the students in those classes were white or Asian. All the students in those classes were white or Asian, right? And so I'm sitting there thinking, this seems to be an economic issue, right? That you know, because these classes can cost thousands of dollars, depending on, you know, what package you get. These classes can cost thousands of dollars. If you come from a poor area, you're not sending your kid to a class on how to take SAT or something like that costs you thousands of dollars. You just can't. So, but notice, the kids who take those classes, your score does go up. Your SAT score is going to go up 200 or 300 points by taking that class, learning how to break down every question you're going to be faced with, memorizing the definitions of the couple hundred most common words that are used on there, learning every sort of math problem that they're going to, your score goes up hundreds of points. Well, guess what? Because of an economic situation, now you have white kids and Asian kids whose scores are skyrocketing. And so you look at a situation like that, and on the one hand, you want to say, you know, can a poor person achieve the same results? Well, yeah, you don't get to take the class, but you could sit there and study the SAT. You can go to the library and sit there and study an SAT. It's not as easy for you to do because you're not being handed that opportunity and put into a structured class by your parents and stuff like that. You can do it. So you can say that you can still get it done. You can still rock your SAT and study on your own. But there is clearly a problem there. And so going along with what you're saying, that, you know, with a whole community, you know, that if we're talking about, you know, trying to mitigate these kinds of disparities and so on, you know, the inclination would be, all right, well, why don't a couple of people who teach test prep do some free classes for people in communities that cannot afford them, so that, you know, kids whose parents can't afford them but who are motivated enough and would like to take the class, there you go in and you help them out. And so that, I think, is, you know, you have to emphasize, guys, you just got to work hard. You can't be sitting around blaming everyone else. And nevertheless, there are people who are in a less privileged position who don't have the same opportunities as other people. And so how do you actually help people who, if they had the help, would actually make it and be successul, but, you know, they still need some help. So anyway, that's
good. I mean, but that's perfect, because there's an intersection between personal accountability and, I guess, what I refer to as charity. You know what I'm saying? You got personal responsibility. You know, you got to get up and get on your grind. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you also have, you know, for those who do have the means, can be charitable, and there's this intersection between the two that'll bring about a greater level of well-being for somebody. But I mean, I agree with you. I mean, on the one hand, I'll never forget. So I was in like 5th or 6th grade or something like that, and I was just making bad grades. You know, I wasn't doing well, F's, D's, or whatever. I don't even know how you do that, you know, that early in school, but you know, somehow I managed to do it. And my dad, he came to me and said, "Look, we help you with your homework every night. There's no reason why you should be getting F's and D's." Now, the reality is, because they were helping me so much in my schoolwork, when I would go to class, I didn't really know the stuff. And then when I would take the test, I would fail. That was the problem. Mm-hmm. So my dad says, "Look, here's what's going to happen. From now on, we're not helping you at all with your homework. Sink or swim, it's on you. You will get the consequences that come along with not doing well. And if you do well, you get a reward. But at the end of the day, it's on you, brother. That's it." I kid you not, that next semester, I mean, that next grading period, I made honor roll for the first time. You know what I'm saying? First time ever. Because that security blanket was taken away. I had to actually put in some real work. And I felt proud of it. I still remember it to this day. You know what I'm saying? It's my first time making a 3.0. So there's this element of self-determination. There's this element of, hey, I got to get on my grind and do what I got to do. Now at the end of that, obviously my parents were still feeding me. They're still providing an environment within which studying can occur. There's all kinds of things there. You know what I'm saying? So I can't say that I did it all on my own, but you got to put your best foot forward. You know what I'm saying? And I think that I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna just keep it 100 and bringing it back to the issue of race. I'm gonna just keep it all the way real. I think part of the problem that we have right now in most of these discussions is that there's this hot potato of blame that people want to toss back and forth. Mm-hmm. Black people want to blame, not all black people, but many black people want to blame the man, white people, or whatever for everything that's going on in the black community, and they don't want to deal with issues that are internal to the community. Mm-hmm. All communities have problems. All cultures have problems. I'm saying, so you have to be real about that. On the flip side, you have people who are outside the black community that don't want to acknowledge anything, any of the issues that are going on that have brought about certain outcomes. And so that's why, when a black person says A, B, and C about police brutality, is, oh, what about black on black crime? And then so the hot potato gets tossed that way. And then the black person was, well, yeah, but we wouldn't have that black on black crime if it wasn't for this, that, and the third. So there's this hot potato when really what happens is there should be this intersection, like you described, between self-determination and personal accountability and and charity. You know what I'm saying? Like in really interacting with other people in a just way. There's a complementary relationship between the two. Mm-hmm. But in the world, I mean, to be honest, I don't see how that's possible. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to be a nihilist about it, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure that in the world that folks have the capacity to make the kind of change necessary to correct these things. I think the best hope that we have is the gospel, and for Christians to live out the scope of the gospel and exemplify what it means to be just, and thus, through that we can shed some light on things. But in and of themselves, I'm not sure if those in the world have the capacity to really make that happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we definitely need the gospel because, that really changes how you view other people and the significance that other people have. And so, yeah, it's kind of I think we agree on sort of you need a mixed approach on the one hand, because I want to tell people who either come from a poor background or are getting out of prison or something like that. I'm like, look, you don't have time to sit around complaining, dude. You have to, whatever. If you're black and you're worried, you're saying, hey, the reason I'm here is because so and so has oppressed me. Guess what? That may be true. There may be people who, because of historical situations, you ended up in a poorer community and you're in an underprivileged status. But guess what? Look, you want to beat Whitey? You got to outwork. You got to outwork Whitey. You got to be better than Whitey. You need to raise better kids than Whitey. You need to be to work before Whitey. You need to leave work after Whitey. You need to be better than Whitey, and that's how you beat Whitey, right? Not by trying to tear down everyone else. So on the one hand, there has to be that. And you don't want people to just become like completely dependent on the system, because that doesn't help them. And yet there are people who just kind of need a little boost, right? They do need help. There are people who it's almost like, because I'm saying this because I felt like this when I was doing graduate school and had kids, and there was a time when things were so bad we had to send our oldest two kids to live with their grandparents because we couldn't even feed them. That's how messed up it is that I'm in school. By this time we had 4 kids. 2 were disabled, so my wife has to be taking care of the disabled kids. So I have to be providing for the family, but I'm also I'm in school. So it was just a nightmare. We couldn't even feed people. But the whole time I felt like I just need a little bit of break or some breathing room to catch up. And if I can actually get started, if I get a little breathing space, then I would actually be. And I think a lot of people are in that situation. They're so bogged down by life just crashing down all around them that they hear, well, why don't you just work harder? And it's, what are you talking about, man? I'm barely struggling to survive. Whereas those people, if they could just kind of catch up and get a little bit ahead, bam, they just take off. And so,
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, so there's there's no mutual exclusivity between being on your grind and doing what you got to do and contending against injustice wherever it is. I mean, you can do both. I mean, you don't have to camp out on, okay, I'm just going to be mad about injustice, 24/7. Yeah, I don't like injustice too, but at the end of the day, I got 4 kids. So I got to get out here and do what I need to do. And I legally, obviously, I don't want anybody to misinterpret that. But you got to do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that, we have to do better about taking a more careful, measured approach instead of just, that hot potato blame back and forth. Like, everybody just need to look in the mirror, man. What can I do to, get myself in a better position? And, what can I do to help somebody else? You know what I'm saying? Love others as I love myself, right? Like, what can I do to help the next man? And if we adopt that posture, then I think we'll really chip away at, what we're seeing in society, or even if not, at least we'll be living out the biblical ethic, and I think that's where we want to be. All
right, we haven't heard from Vocab in about 1,000 years, so right. we did have some other issues pulled up, so let's go ahead and kind of zoom through them rapid fire here in about the next 10 minutes. All right, Vocab, you ready?
Yeah, in 15 minutes.
Yep.
Head over to youtube.com/Vocab Malone, because I am airing about 15 minutes worth of bloopers from Islamicize Me.
All right, so
you definitely want to see him, as well as part of a deleted scene.
Yeah, let's all do that.
I'm gonna drop the link.
Let's all right after we finish this. We'll finish this right before. We'll finish this in 15 minutes, and then we'll all head over to Vocab's channel. All right, Vocab. I don't know if you can see this, but up on the screen here, we have the Land O'Lakes original rapping, and we have a Native American woman holding some butter, and so that was the rapper recently, and now of course we have the new version, and she's been removed. She's been taken off, which kind of makes sense because now it's Land O'Lakes. It's not Land of Native Americans. It's now it's just a lake. Now they just have a picture of a lake up. So this is part of a pattern, and we can go ahead and bring up a couple more issues, but let me get this. So as far as things being canceled, let me see if I can get this article pulled up. I believe I have the technology here.
Well, wait, can you go back to the Land O'Lakes picture with the native lady one more time?
Yeah, we can. Let me read this real quick, and then we'll kind of wait. Matter of fact, just let me read these couple headlines real quick, and then we'll kind of discuss all of them sort of one at a time. Okay, so here we have from CNN: Confederate statues are coming down following George Floyd's death. Here's what we know. And so we got this issue of statues of Robert E. Lee and other Civil War figures. There's statues being pulled down. I don't think we've ever talked about that. And so, and then the other one we'll discuss here in a minute. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and pull it up real quick. Another one, since we've got Adam Coleman here. And he's got some issues. Here we have
what are we doing here?
Redskins to drop name, yielding to pressure from sponsors and activists. Redskins are dropping their name, yielding to pressure from sponsors and activists. And for real, they're talking about dropping the Redskins. That's not good enough. I mean, at least it's not going to be good enough for long, because they're going to have to drop the Washington too, because that dude was a total slave owner. So you got to drop both of them. You got to drop the whole thing. All right, Vocab, on the Land O'Lakes. You say you want me to put it back up?
Well, yeah.
Which one, the old or the new?
The old one.
Okay, we got the old one. All right, we got Land O'Lakes up.
All right, this is going to end up being really bad. Whatever's about to happen, I don't know. I got a bad feeling about
Yeah, I always get nervous with Vocab. I feel like he's going to get my channel canceled or something like that, by doing something dumb.
Like you just came back like not too long ago.
No.
Like
What's wrong with him?
Me? You
saying Vocab?
Vocab, why did you want this? Why did you want this up? I got Land O'Lakes up on the screen, and you're just quiet.
Well, one thing about that I would say it's negative about them changing the logo is that if you notice, if you cut a slit right there and right there on each side of the lady, and then you can do a little trick where you fold up where her knees are, and you can fold them up right where her chest is, and it creates a virtual illusion.
Oh,
and
I
now
get
that's
it.
going to be lost.
I get it, you pervert. What the heck? That's what. See, this is what I mean. This is what vocab adds to the line.
Vocab is Professor Griff. That's what he is.
Guys,
If he comes on your channel, it's a wrap.
Yeah, guys, do you understand what vocab is talking about here? He's pointing out what little 8-year-old kids do, and they think it's fun. They get the Land O'Lakes wrapper, and then you see the knees there. Well, if you fold with the knees up to where she's holding the butter, you get this optical illusion there. And super mature vocab, super mature. So I
thought that was an important point. We are losing that aspect of culture.
Vocabs. This is the level of vocab's thinking on issues of race and cancel culture
in general. Yeah. Right.
All right, let's go through a couple of these thoughts on the Redskins. Now we actually have a shame-riddled Redskins fan here.
It's not me.
Ain't me either, son.
All right, so like real talk. So I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, 10 minutes outside DC. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in the 80s, and I mean my whole family was Washington football fans. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to use the name. I'll just say they're Washington fans. I grew up. It's been in my family for however long, like 100 years or so. I don't know how. I mean, whatever. It goes way back. Anyway, my point is, growing up, I was a Washington fan. I mean, I actually met Doug Williams. So people don't know who Doug Williams is. Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. He came to my church. I met the guy. We had got his autograph. I had met Bobby Mitchell. I mean, I'm talking about that. It goes way back. Now, that's when I was a kid. Now, when I was a teenager, you know what I'm saying, I realized that, the name's probably not that cool. It's probably kind of, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, as I was going into college, I was like, I'm not really rocking with it, And so for a good decade and a half, I just boycotted it. I was like, all right, I'm no longer going to be a Redskins fan. I was a Titans fan for a while. Then I was rocking with the Chargers and most recently, the Baltimore Ravens. And then I actually thought about going back to being a Washington fan because I was like, okay, well, supposedly it was named after some chief or something like that. It was like a warrior or something that's supposed to be like kind of, respect to him. And so for like a half a season, I was a Washington fan again. And I was like, nah, but I got the Tru-ID podcast now. So I can't be, Tru-ID, the real you and Mago Day, and then rocking with the most like racist name in all of sports, So I had to drop it again, I had to kind of let it ride. However, I'm saying I was elated. Like, about a week or so ago, they announced that the Redskins name, the Washington name is they're taking Redskins out of it. And I think they're going to replace the logo as well. Mm-hmm. And so when I read the article, I was like, I was hyped. I was up here working on my stuff for the job. I was yelling down the steps to my wife, like, babe, I'm back. I'm back in Washington finally. After boycotting the squad for all these years. So nobody's more excited about this name being changed than I am.
So
I don't know what they're going to change it to.
You're a fan.
I am a fan. Now, there's been a couple proposed names that I'm not really too keen on. Like, I think they were talking about maybe the Red Tails. I think that's a horrible name. I mean, I get it. I mean, I much respect to the actual Red Tails historically, but I think that's a terrible name for a sports franchise. So I hope they don't go there. I heard Warriors. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but I'm glad. I'm just happy to be home. I'm just happy to be back in Washington. That's all I'm saying. I guarantee you. I've been saying it for years. If we change the name, we're going 16-0. I'm telling you. I've been saying that for years.
What were you guys last year? Like 3-13 or something?
Oh, we're getting this. It's a Super Bowl now. Like, we're going from 3-13. Like, it's automatic Super Bowl, guaranteed.
Yeah, my view on that is, I mentioned earlier that originally, Redskin was just it was people weren't using technical terms for races and they referred to black, white, and red. And so, back when people were referring to Redskin, they meant it as in a kind of warrior sense. But things can take on new connotations, and changing the name of something is, for the diehard fans who are like, but I got like 3 jerseys, and now they're not even going to be correct and stuff. Gosh, I feel like there are worse things in the world that you could experience than your team changing a name, because some people, even a minority of people, are upset about it and don't like it, and they view that as a pejorative term for them. And so, guys, you just got to make some changes along the way. And if it doesn't bother anyone, then hey, if it bothers enough people, then why wouldn't you want something that that everyone can get on board with? At the same time, you do have to wonder, where does it stop? Like, does it do you need to change the Washington part, because people are going to be upset and offended at that, and they want to tear down everything to do with Washington? And at what point do you, like, almost everything you could tear down and say, because of this 100 years ago or 150 years ago, you now have to tear that down. And so this goes back to the what do you guys think about Confederate statues being torn down? What do you guys think in the chat about the Confederate statues? Now, I understand you got there are issues with like statues of Lincoln being knocked down and stuff like that. But as far as like Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson or something like that, where do you guys stand in the chat? What are your guys' thoughts? Okay.
Well, I wanted to first say, Adam, if you want to leave the Washington Redskins when they're the Redskins and go to other teams, that's understandable and all that. But all the flip-flopping in between there, I don't know what's wrong. What was the fair weather? What was it with that?
Here you go.
I just,
man.
How
many teams was that in the meantime, bro?
Yeah, the Titans. For about 3 months, it was the Jaguars. The Chargers was probably the main one, and then the Ravens moved to Baltimore, so they kind of gave me a home base. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
whatever.
I rock with them from there. So I
I heard the story already. I'm surprised you're willing to admit it.
No, I want to say this real quick. I mean, like, there is a local precedent about changing names. Like, so back in, I guess maybe like the late 90s.
Is there a local precedent of changing teams every other month too?
There you go. I'm used to it, because like my friend's been joking on me for that for years. But the Washington Wizards used to be the Washington Bullets. You know what I'm saying? That was their name prior to, but they changed the name Bullets because of all the crime, violent crime going on in Washington, D.C. So it's kind of like a show of good faith. The basketball team changed its name from the Bullets to the Washington Wizards. You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's kind of like a local precedent for, changing names, so to speak, for good reasons, I think. You know what I mean?
So someone blocked Freer Rudolph's comment, but he said Washington Rednecks would be a great name to make it more inclusive for David. I don't know why I got blocked for that. I come from I have a hillbilly background. BFG 10,000 said Washington bureaucrats. that would actually get.
Some of these, I recognize we got almost 1,000 people in here, but some of these comments, some people are, in all seriousness, are saying Adam was a SJW, for example, because he wanted to leave the patently offensive name of the Redskins and not root for them. And I see all these kind of comments.
Oh, really? Okay.
Listen to the live chat. Listen
SJW,
up,
radical leftist. Adam Coleman.
Hey, when there's almost 1,000 people in here, we've got chemists, we've got everything, right? So it's all good. But let me, in a sense of, I expect a diversity of ideas. But to those kind of folks, is there any awareness to you who are saying this stuff and asking questions you think are funny, like, are we allowed to eat brownies still? Do you guys, do you have any idea the real history of the United States in relationship to indigenous peoples here? You don't have to be it doesn't even make sense why you would think you would need to be a leftist to have some compassion and to have some recognition of the shameful history of the United States government and the peoples and how they have treated Native Americans, and why Redskins then, when you have sort of a racial slur as a name, compounds it and is a reminder of that negative legacy. For example, my folks just visited a small little town in Ohio where the Moravians had established a missionary outpost specifically for the Delaware Indians in that area. And the Delaware Indians, by and large, accepted and embraced Christianity. And they were peaceful, and the Moravians were very peaceful. They just basically believed in praying and did not bother people. And the Delaware Indians followed suit. The Moravians and the Delaware living together in peaceful harmony, and they were this little enclave. Well, some other Native Americans in that area of the Ohio frontier slaughtered some villagers, a different Native American tribe. In response, certain Ohioans raised a militia and slaughtered the Delaware Indians, the peaceful Delaware Indians who had adopted Christianity, who were in harmony with white Moravians. and just slaughtered them and killed them because they couldn't distinguish, well, who were the good ones and the bad, and they killed women and they killed and they just killed them. And the thing is, this kind of story can be replicated again and again and again. So to me, I don't understand the like total flippancy. Like I even get people want to disagree. I get all that. But it seems like there's this total lack of awareness and total flippancy. And I don't know your guys' political, spiritual, theological, but if you're a Christian, you've got to do better than this total flippancy in regards to that. It's not saying the United States is the worst country. It's not about that. It's recognizing the reality of where we are now in 2020 based upon this and just kind of really taking this into consideration. Like when my parents relayed that story, because they just visited last week, my heart hurt, even though it happened, a couple hundred years ago. It's a heartbreaking story. And when you multiply that, you gotta see, and then you're dealing with, the Redskins. So, I don't appreciate Adam's flip-flopping after that, but leaving the Redskins was a good idea, and I'm glad you can feel like you can come back.
But no, so now this is where we can get get back to the scripture with it, right? Let me kind of get some context now.
And it's not a red herring. People are trying to say it's a red herring. How is that a red herring? I'm getting a little frustrated here, but go ahead.
Let's connect it back to something I said in the beginning. Like at the end of the day, I'm all about being consistent. I'm saying that's just been baked into me, I guess. Maybe I get it from my parents. But here's the thing: I have grown up my entire life within a societal context, where I'm constantly being told that based upon my skin color, I'm less than. Like I'm talking about today in my lifetime. The first time I was called the N-word was I was in 3rd grade. You know what I'm saying? And I had to go back to my mom.
Adam, no one does that in the United States of America. It doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. No one says that.
Nobody says that.
What were you in 3rd grade in the 1820s?
I in the chat in my neighborhood have never seen that. Therefore, it doesn't happen in the United States.
It doesn't happen, right?
Maybe that was a dream, Adam. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Imagine like being a parent and having your child. This is what happened. I was in 3rd grade. I go back. I have to ask my mom, like, what does that word mean? Imagine being my mom and having to explain to me what the N-word means to your 3rd grade, right? And so, and I could recount other stories. But my point is this: I've come up in that kind of scenario. So for me, being a Christian, if I don't like that kind of a thing, if I'm going to live out this notion of loving my neighbor as myself, then I've got to be sensitive in that sense to others who may be offended for reasons that are of a racial nature or whatever. So that's why I had to come up off that name. As a matter of fact, shout out to my man Phil Fox. He's a Native American. He was educating me the other day, in terms of, we were talking about the whole Redskins thing, and what he said was that it's not just the name in terms of the Redskins thing, but it's like, and I'm just have to defer to him. But apparently among many people in the Native American context, they don't want to be looked at as just being mascots. It's like, look, we're people. Like you can't just not deal with us any other time in society, but other than representing us as mascots. Like that's offensive. Now, that's not my experience. I don't know what that's like. But I'm still going to give an ear to them, but like, dag, I never really thought about that. How do I respond to that morally speaking? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's my whole point is we have to live out the biblical ethic. At the end of the day, it's just like, it's like what Paul says. We talk about those who eat meat and those who don't. Mm-hmm. Like, don't let your liberty be a vice. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying, for others? Defer to your brothers. And if somebody is weak in a particular area, however you want to construe that, then to walk out love toward that person, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I think we have to be careful of that.
Yeah, and
guys, I gotta go. My video's premiering right now.
You're getting off for a video premiere when you could just type comments right there. You could just type comments on this discussion of race. And you're like, oh, my video's premiering, even though it'll just be a regular video 15 minutes from now. Let me cut out.
Yeah.
Vocab Malone's priorities. You saw, but we got your view on Land O'Lakes. We got your view on Land O'Lakes, so you can take off. Me and Adam will carry on, keep the struggle going.
But no problem.
We're about to cut out anyway, man. I thought we were done in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, but we got to wrap up this discussion.
You keep on dropping nuggets.
We gotta. I didn't know there was going to be such a hostile reaction here.
Okay.
on the issue of Redskins. So, guys, we can imagine a situation where a term that is not considered derogatory could later on be derogatory, and do you then change a team name? So. Let's just imagine a situation where, Adam, the calling someone colored now would be considered derogatory, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whereas 50 years ago, that was like the term of choice, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
so suppose we modify the situation. Suppose that the term colored 50 years ago had a positive connotation of like a warrior, right? A warrior. And suppose you named your team after that because you wanted that warrior status. Well, if now the connotation has changed and now it's interpreted differently, why would people? I can't understand why people would be so opposed. Well, you must be a radical SJW to want to change that. No, you could just be saying, well, this is offensive to some people, and we don't want we don't want the name of, we want a team name that everyone can rally around and be happy with. And even if some people loved that team name because that's been their team name that they've rallied around, and that they have, they grew up with posters on their wall with that team name, and they've got jerseys of that team name. Again, it's not the thing that make us flip out. The things that, first world problems, the things that make us flip out. Of all the things that can upset you in the world, oh my goodness, he wants to change his team name because some people say. Here's my only concern with things like changing teams' names and stuff like that. Is the objection really coming from people who are offended by it, or is it just people who are using that issue to try and tear down something else? Right? Because I think a lot of times it is that latter situation where, and with something like the Redskins, it's a mixture. You got people who are obsessed with tearing everything down. We want to level everything we can level right now, and the easiest way we can get to level something and destroy something and bring something down is if we can call it racist. And there are certain things that you can point to and say, look, that's racist, right? And so these groups, I never want to kind of kneel to those groups. And so if the charge is coming from people who are just, I'm looking for something to tear down. I don't care what it is. I'm going to call something racist because I want to tear it down. I don't ever want to bend the knee to those people.
Yeah.
But if there are people who just legitimately say, I don't like the name of my team, you should consider those people. And you're someone who you're not just jumping on a bandwagon. You're saying you had that issue.
Yeah, I mean,
this thing has been.
It's been an issue for a while, right? And, now there are some things that we're seeing going on now where it's obviously kind of like the new wave, of just anti-racism, whatever you want to call it. But with respect to the Washington name, that's been around for like a while. Now, I will say this. It is important to look at I think the diversity of dynamics that go into it. You have some people who've been saying it for a while, but then you also have, again, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, the capitalism. I think it was Amazon.com prior to Washington deciding to do what they're going to do. Amazon.com said, all right, we're just not selling any of your merch, And I think there was a couple other companies as well. It was like, all right, we're no longer selling Washington Redskins stuff. Now, we can't be naive and think that, a Dan Snyder, who's the owner of the Redskins, we can't think that he's not looking at the economic impacts of holding onto this name. When it wasn't going to hit him in the pocket, he kind of stand his ground a little bit, right? But if there's really going to be some economic cost that's going to impact the franchise, just on a corporate level, I'm saying, think about it on a corporate level, he has an obligation to his investors. He has an obligation to his board. And so he has to make a decision that's going to make sure that the money keeps flowing, i.e., make some changes with the name and the logo. I mean, all those different things, come into play. And I think that's legit. You know what I'm saying? If I was him, that's what I would do, right? So there's a whole lot of different dynamics. I mean, I think that's one thing that makes the Washington name thing different from, say, like the Confederate statues. I mean, that's not necessarily a business or decision type of a deal. I don't think. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects that go into these discussions. I think sometimes people just oversimplify, in ways that aren't helpful. And like I said, I mean, you mentioned the Confederates. I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax. I mean, people have different views. I mean, I know you posted in the chat, so I don't know if anybody responded. But, I mean, that's a whole different ball of wax right there. I mean, I grew up every day. I went to school. I had to travel along Jefferson Davis Highway. You know what I'm saying? Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy, right? Yep. Every day. Mm-hmm. So the equipment. Imagine sending your child to Nat Turner Elementary. I mean, it's not going to happen. That would never happen in a billion years, right? Rob. I tell people this all the time. That it actually, as of 2020, this has now changed officially. No, actually, I take that back. I think it was a couple years ago. But when I was in school, right? When I was in school, we didn't celebrate, high school particularly. We didn't celebrate Martin Luther King Day. We had Lee Jackson King Day. Robert E. Lee,
Yeah.
Stonewall Jackson, and Martin Luther King were celebrating.
Yeah, you had to tack them
the
on there.
same day.
I remember. Yeah, you had to tack that on.
Right? That's what we had. Now they changed it after I graduated. They changed it some years later, and as of this year, it's officially off the books entirely. But we did the whole thing. Me and Vocab did about you still have like Confederate Day that's celebrated like in Georgia, Florida, and these different things. So, and I understand like symbols mean different things to different people. But obviously, why would you want to go to a school or travel along a road that's named after somebody that wanted to keep your ancestors in chains?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like why would nobody? Who would want to do that? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so I agree. That let's check out some comments here, because a lot of people are flipping out, and they're
if I wasn't SJW before,
they're offended. They're offended at everything we say. How dare you say that? But we'll defend this Confederate statue. But how dare you?
Right.
How dare you be offended by a statue of a general for the Confederate States who tried to split, America into two countries? How dare you be offended at that? But I'm going to be super offended that you're offended at that. Yeah, so
and I'm offended.
yeah.
Right.
All right, let's check out a couple comments. So Raymond the Large said, I'm Native American, and I'm very touched by your kind words and your defense of our people. God bless you. That was a comment to Vocab Malone. So Vocab's point was, guys, it's really easy for you to sit back and say, well, gosh, what are these people complaining about? What are these people complaining about? Guys, there are some people who've had some different experience. I mean, there are people in the chat who are flipping out because they disagree with us on something. Imagine if something worse happened to you. Imagine if your community was wiped out by people and then they took your name. The point is, I don't care what I'm not in Adam's position. I don't care what the Redskins call themselves. I just don't care. I don't care if they keep the name Redskins. I don't care if they change the name Redskins. I just don't care. I don't like that team. They suck either way. All right? I do not care. If they want to change the name, change their team's name, that's up to them. But I can at least get my mind around someone who would be offended by that. Now, I can get my mind around that, and someone saying, "Yeah, I don't want that name. I don't like that name, and I choose not to support that team." I can understand that, and that's what I think.
I gotta say this very quick. You're my homeboy, and I don't mean anything by it. So I just want to point out that based upon what you just said, there are people in the chat who literally have less empathy for other people than a
psychopath. Yeah.
I just want to point that. Just really think about that.
I'm a psychopath, and this is something that I find amazing, and this is a problem across society right now. Namely that, however I feel on this issue is how everyone else should feel on this issue, and if anyone else feels differently because they've had different experiences, well, shame on them. They need to be destroyed.
Right.
In other words, what the people here would find so ridiculous about cancel culture is they're not canceling people. They're not canceling people, but they still have the same issue in that if you disagree with me, watch. After we get off here, David, I'm gonna get all these messages. David, I unsubscribed for your channel after you said that it's okay for the Washington Redskins to change their name. You're not doing it to the same extent, but it's the same thing. I cannot conceive of anyone disagreeing with me on something. I'm kind of if you go too far, you end up just destroying everything, but in this, you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Is there any sort of concern here that is legitimate? If so, then it's up for discussion.
Right.
If so, it's up for discussion.
I'm gonna really messing people up. Watch this. And you're talking about the Confederacy, right? I'm gonna really mess people up. Now, here's the thing. I'm from Virginia. I'm from the South, right? I went to high school in a very rural area.
That's why you got that.
Right?
That's why you got that Southern accent.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. But so here's the thing. I get it. When it comes to people who say that they want to preserve the heritage of the South, listen, I understand completely that there's more to the South than slavery. That's what I know it's going to mess people up. Listen, I understand that, right? There's food, music, cultural habits, and there's all. It was a complete culture, and I understand that the slavery issue and the Civil War has eclipsed much of that in the public eye. I get that. So if you have a person who says that I love Southern living, I know from personal experience from dealing with people from those backgrounds, I know that doesn't mean that they're necessarily pro-slavery, right? Therefore, when it comes to, if somebody on their private property says, I just love the South and I want to have things, representing that in the South, on your own private property, God bless you. Do whatever you want to do. That's your right, right? Now, when it comes to public property, when it comes to parks, when it comes to street names and so on and so forth, when you're dealing with public property, now you've got to subject those things to a different lens, through a different lens, right? You've got to say, does Robert E. Lee, is he emblematic of something that the public that's representative of the public today? And if that's not the case, and people go through the proper channels to have him taken down, then as a democratic society, I don't see why anybody would have a problem with that. Now, I'm not for just running up on stuff, tearing it down. That's not my thing. I'm saying I don't, but if people in a particular locality, I'm thinking about Charlottesville specifically, in that particular locality, they voted to have Robert E. Lee removed. That's the democratic process. Like, nobody should be ticked off about that. It's not infringing on your rights. And people are saying, hey, this doesn't represent us, and we're not going to have it anymore. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like Adam in that I can get where someone's coming from even if I disagree, because on the issue of Confederate statues, I'm like, you rebel scum, you fought, you lost, live with it. Ain't no should be any statues celebrating your guys. I can sit, and they're like, but Lee was a great general. He's one of the greatest generals in history. So that's true.
Sure.
Yeah. So that doesn't mean you celebrate him by honoring him in parks and on streets. And so anyway,
well, I mean, exactly.
He didn't do that well at Gettysburg anyway. I'm just saying. He got lethal brawler. He made a huge blunder, but he actually ran out into the middle of his soldiers and acknowledged that he made a blunder. One of the few mistakes that dude ever made. So you can have all the respect for his military ability, and I can sit here and say, if that statue's been in that park for 90 years, and people go to the park, and kids take field trips to the park, and they discuss Lee and stuff like that, and so I don't want that thing being torn down and stuff like that. I get that. I totally get that. I get that. That's part of the story of the South. But I also get it when you rebel scum. And so I just want to be clear. I'm not advocating the mobs going out and tearing stuff down. Right. I think it should be a community decision, stuff like that. The point is that people are freaking out any sort of change, and some of it's like, wait a minute, these guys literally tried to destroy the United States of America by splitting it up in defense of slavery. And you're sitting here building monuments to them. Can you at least get your mind around why some people would have a problem with that?
Would have an issue with it. And that's the thing, is that there's a difference between preserving history and memorializing particular aspects of history. I mean, those are two very different things. I'm saying, like, so, and to kind of bring it home, let's just really think about it. And Vocab, where I'm going with this, because we had a whole show on it. But, if the Confederacy seceded from the Union, whether you think they were justified or not, let's just say that if their secession was to be recognized, then that means that they were an enemy combatant. They were a different nation fighting against, what we refer to as America today, right? Or let's say that their secession wasn't legit. So then these are people that are treasonous fighting against the Union. So the question is, for us today in public spaces, why should we memorialize and honor either traitors or enemy combatants of another nation? That doesn't make any sense, because if we're going to do that, then General Rommel in World War II, he was a great general. The Desert Fox, man, let's get something for him. I mean, I could be real offensive if I wanted to, but we could talk about Osama bin Laden. I mean, he was doing his thing for a while. Let's build a memorial to him. Obviously, that's silly, right? Now, here's the thing. Now I'm gonna end it out with this, but when you think about all this angst that was over Colin Kaepernick taking a knee towards the flag, and then people say, oh, he's protesting flags, disrespect, and so on and so forth. Well, look, Confederate soldiers were shooting bullets at the flag in their time, which represents the Union that we're a part of today. So you would want to memorialize people who were literally shooting bullets at the flag and be mad about Colin Kaepernick, who was taking a knee. That's obviously inconsistent. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree with Kaepernick. I'm just saying that let's be consistent. You know what I'm saying? And at least try to understand where the people are coming from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's strange when people say... they'll say something like, if you say support the proper removal of Confederate displays, funded by tax, that's memorializing, they'll say, well, I'm patriotic. If you don't like America, leave it. It's like, how is it patriotic to support the enemies of the United States? I don't understand how that's patriotic to do that. And that flag, as we discussed, that's the battle flag of Northern Virginia. It's not even actually the Confederate flag for the Confederacy. It's a battle flag that was taken into battle against the Union. So it's like, it's sort of extra sauce, you know. It's not even their actual flag. Not that would necessarily make it, but it's like, so how are we gonna, you know, rock that like it's a good thing? But David over here sounding like the Empire. Rebel scum. That's what the Empire. That's what they say to the rebels.
Empire, man.
Well, I see what's really going on here now.
Right.
Apologetics Empire talking about rebel scum.
Yeah, that's. You got comments, you know, by people who, again, it's just an ongoing issue of not seeing things from other people's perspective. So just to be clear, because people are pointing out, well, you know, these people tore down a Frederick Douglass statue. These people are destroying destroying churches.
Who tore down that Frederick Douglass? We don't know.
Thank you.
It's bait. It's bait to make you say the same people. We don't know who tore down that statue.
Well, regardless, nothing I've said so far is in support of the mob. I specifically said if a community gets to the point where they say, you know what, we don't want that there. What do you say? No, because that's been there for 90 years. It has to be there. It has to be there forever. That I just don't get. It's like, you know, it's like.
And I would argue that you have the same angst either way, because in Charlottesville a couple of years ago, where they had that the marches up, that's what the situation was. It wasn't people tearing down Robert E. Lee. Mm-hmm. There was a vote. You know what I'm saying? And they voted down.
Done by City Hall, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And it was still taken down. You know what I'm saying? Like these are legal process. Now you can oppose it. That's fine. You know what I mean? But go through legal process. I mean, I'm not advocating the mob either, and because I just don't trust people, you know, to go about, you know, mobbing and doing.
Yeah, because once the mob is empowered to go around enforcing justice, then the mob can kind of go around doing what they want, and so
right.
Yeah,
that's not good for them.
Yeah, and so that's just bad. All right, let's take a couple more comments and then we'll wrap it. I think we are going to have to come back to the Colin Kaepernick issue. Probably when football season starts, if it indeed actually starts, and we'll see how it goes. But
I wrote a whole article on it, so maybe we can cover that. I wrote an article.
Yeah, because I haven't said much about Colin Kaepernick because I'm trying to figure out how to say this concisely. When someone is protesting, I'm thinking you can blast something. You can blast something even that you love and that you want to see it change, right? You can, hey, here's this thing that I love and I want to blast away at it because I really want this thing to change. If so, you can protest. You can protest all day long. I think protests are great, even if I happen to disagree with, you know, how you're doing it and stuff like that. I'm not going to criticize you in the same way that I would if you hate something and you're trying to destroy it, right? You're trying to destroy. So in other words, what I'm talking about here, when you are criticizing the United States, is it because you love the United States and you want the United States to get better, or is it because you hate the United States and you want to burn it to the ground? You're out there protesting. I may disagree with how you're protesting and think, oh, there's this much better approach you could be taking, and that is not the right approach. But it's my concern is your heart in the right place or is it not in the right place? That's my main concern. That's my main concern. I'm gonna have different sentiments on what you're doing. So with Colin Kaepernick, it's does he want to burn it all to the ground, or does he love it and want it to improve? So that's my concern. But we can actually look at some stuff and see what we think.
That'd be good. And I'm gonna add to it too. Now a lot of people might. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying that, you know, when we think about like what makes America different from, you know, some third world country, like I'll say like Rwanda or something like that. You know, I was held at gunpoint in Africa back in like 2004, right? And one of the things I was in Kenya at the time. So one of the things I was thinking about as it was going on, I was like, man, I'm not in America right now. You know, what makes America different from a place where, you know, over here, if there's a political dispute, you go vote a person out. Mm-hmm. In some of these other countries, they're coming out with hatchets and machetes, and people are losing arms. You know what I'm saying? I think that one of the things that makes America different is that there are, and actually you addressed this in the police video you did about cops. Mm-hmm. You know, there are channels that people can go through to vent their frustrations, right? I think if somebody, no matter how much you think is a disgrace or whatever, if people are in a non-violent mode voicing their frustrations, I say let them do it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's legal and for the most part, like I said, legal and nonviolent, let them do it. You know what I'm saying? Because I would much rather have that than rioting, looting and violence in the streets. You know what I'm saying? I think that we have to honor, America has a great tradition of allowing the voice of dissent to speak. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that allows our nation to fare a lot better than some other nations. I think that we have to be careful not to remove that just because somebody, cancel culture, right? We have to be careful not to cancel that out.
Yeah, and that is an issue that keeps coming up in that right now everyone's being canceled over, and this goes back to how we started. We're talking about Nick Cannon, and if you say, well, you said these things and they're messed up, you said some messed up stuff, and then we're going to crush you and end your career. If you haven't really changed his mind or changed anyone who shares those views' minds, all you've done is silence them. And notice that on the one hand, you can have people who have stupid ideas, but they're allowed to put their stupid ideas out there for public criticism and discussion, versus people who have stupid ideas and they have to keep them bottled up because they'll be crushed if they bring those out there. And the tendency now is you have to crush the people and hope that the problem goes away. Well, the problem doesn't go away. They just realize they can't talk about it. Those are the people who, and I'm not talking about Nick Cannon in particular here. He's set for life. I'm talking about other people, whatever position they actually have. Once historically in the United States, one of the great aspects of Western civilization as we know it now has been that the default method when you have a disagreement is to settle it through discussion, discourse, debate, things like that, right? You talk about it and try to prove your case. If you remove that, if you do away with that, you're not allowed to say something that disagrees with me. That you're not changing people's views. You're just going to change their methods of getting what they want, and they're not going to put their view out there for public scrutiny to see where it leads. They're going to turn to other methods of getting what they want, and there's going to be bloody horrible.
I'm tell you, from personal experience, like if somebody's a racist and if they let it be known, then I'm like, you know what, hey, cool, I appreciate it. At least I know where you stand. I'm just not gonna mess with you. You know what I'm saying? It's the ones that are racist and they keep it bottled up and hidden. Those are the ones that you have to watch out for. Yeah. Those are the ones that are screw you over and kind of do stuff behind your back. But if somebody is racist and you let me know what it is, hey, all right, hey, I know where you are, you know where I am, and we good.
Yeah, I would almost be in favor of something like. I never watched the movie, but I understand the plot line of The Purge, where apparently there was like one day out of the year when all crime was legal and you could go out and just go on a killing spree. So not with crime, but kind of with any view you have. Like there's a day where you can all get up and say any ridiculous thing that you want, and we'll have some quick arguments about it, but we're not going to hold you responsible the next day, right?
Right.
So just
say
any ridiculous thing. Go ahead.
If that was real life, what Vocab Malone would do? Like, he would. Oh shoot! Never mind. I don't want to mention his job on the air. That's right. I forgot.
What's wrong with you? Trying to get
so on that day, Adam, you can tell everyone why you were a Redskins fan.
I caught myself.
All right, couple more. So notice what's going on here. So Robert B. earlier. So this was back when we were talking about the Redskins. He's going, you're straw manning the position. People don't want the name changed because outrage culture is out of control. That's true. But I think I said I got that. I think I said I don't ever want to back down from a mob. What we're saying is you have a bunch of different positions here. This is what I was saying. You have a bunch of different positions. You have people who want to tear stuff down just to tear it down because they want to tear it all down, and that gives them a sense of power. You don't ever want to back down from them. There are people who don't like the name Redskins, not because they're part of outrage culture, but because they find the term offensive. They've been impacted by the history, and they just find it distasteful. Why can't you choose a name that isn't upsetting to us? That makes perfect sense to me. And notice because here Sarah commented right after that. She said, "I think I see what David's saying, and I agree. It's a balance. Notice the people who are, you guys are SJWs. You guys are left. I saw that earlier. It was why does David have these left-wing extremists on here? You saw that, right, Vocab? Now think about this, guys.
I saw that.
Guys, yeah. So notice what's going on here, guys. We're actually pretty balanced on this, right? We're guys who say, I see this person's perspective over here. I see this person's perspective over there. I see this guy's point. This guy's got a point, but this guy also has a point. And so you've kind of all got a point. Here's our particular view. We don't say everyone has to agree with us. We're kind of in the middle on certain issues. But notice, if you go far enough that way, then we are right-wing extremists from your perspective. If you go far enough that way, then we're left-wing extremists from your perspective. Meanwhile, we're sitting here, and to be clear, I'm not politically, I'm not in the middle on every issue. Something like abortion, I'd be considered very clearly on the right. On a lot of issues, I'd be on one side.
Likewise.
But on the issues we're talking about right now, this isn't left wing, right wing. You have people on the left wing who want to the fringe left, just destroy everything. But that's what I mean. It's things are so polarized right now that if you say anything that happens to remotely be on the same page, like these people, to destroy everything and to rip it all down, if I say, actually, I see why some people might be offended by the term redskin, even though that was not the intention. I understand that has taken on connotations now, and therefore that is a consideration. You just lump everyone together with the extremists who say burn everything to the ground, right? Guys, you got to stop that. It's the exact same thing that cancel culture is doing, right? It's if you disagree with me on anything, I lump you together with the extremists. And I don't know if you've been watching, but we are not extremists here. We're not even close to it.
That's the funny part about it, is because at the end of the day, what should happen is if we disagree on something, you should be able to provide your reasons, I provide my reasons, and hopefully we're able to kind of reason our way together towards something that makes some sense. I mean, that's really what should be happening. Like thus far, I just said a second ago, I recognize the South isn't all about slavery. You know, I mean, that's not a very leftist thing to say. You know what I'm saying? Or I talked about how I have a Native American guy who's kind of schooling me on his perspective about the name Redskins and why he doesn't want his Native Americans to be relegated to being just mascots. Like that's I'm like, what, Dad, that makes a lot of sense. I get that. You know what I'm saying? Like we're taking from different perspectives, and for me, ultimately, it boils down to I think that in a fallen world, capitalism provides a better framework of economics than any other that I'm aware of. And from a capitalistic perspective, if you've got the Washington football team, if their product is going to take a loss in the public square, then they have two options. They can either hold on to the name and take whatever financial repercussions come from it, or they can change the name. Economically speaking, it makes more sense to me if you want to maintain a thriving business to change the name. So to me, economically, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Just from a capitalistic standpoint. So there's all these different factors, and this is what real discourse should look like. I think we've almost been lulled to sleep by, I think, like social media and just the way that we have such access to information. It's like, we're allowing the talking heads to do our thinking for us rather than taking our time and working through things in ways that make sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so here's I think the legitimate concern of the people who are here's what I think the most legitimate concern is of the people who are disagreeing with us on this point, on something simple like the Redskins. Again, my position, I don't really care. If you want to change your name, what the heck? It's a team. It's a business. Change your name. You can change your name to anything you want. I just don't care. Right. I'm not offended by the term Redskins. Doesn't bother me. But I understand I'm not the only person in the world, and that other people have different views. Here's the legitimate concern of people who are disagreeing with us. And no, you can never change the name. Their concern isn't simply that the Redskins are changing the name, but it's in response to something that's going on right now. And the legitimate concern that they have is we know that there is no here's what we want and now we're done with the mob that wants to tear everything down and change it, right? You give them an inch, they want 5 inches. You give them 5 inches, they want a foot. You give them a foot, they want 30 feet. There's no stopping. So if you beg, what I think the legitimate concern is, no, you have to. And I might actually be in favor of this position on a lot of issues. Is no, even if they're somewhat right, you don't back down from this group on this issue. If later on, when everything is calm and people come forward and say these are our concerns, and you agree with them, then you can change something. You don't back down from this mob that's doing it, because this mob is not going to stop. As soon as the more you change to appease them, the more power they feel, and the more weakness they sense, the more blood they sense in the water, and the more they come after you. You're simply empowering them. So, if someone could actually pull it off, I might be in favor of a position that says, here are a bunch of things that we are not changing in response to this mob right now. If someone wants to come along afterwards, then that's something else. But not we're not changing what Antifa wants, even if they're clinging to some other movement that is right and has a legitimate point. This mob needs to go away before we actually can sit down and deal with it.
This is interesting. I hadn't really thought about it this way. I'm just going to toss this out. So you're right in the sense that I don't think you can separate the let's say let's call it the problems being raised from the people that are raising the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some interaction there. And I remember the great Ravi Zacharias, man. I don't know if this necessarily goes back to him, but he's the one I heard say it. Is that you got to consider intent. I want to say he says it's kind of like it's prior to content or something like that. You have to, or at least you have to consider intent along with the content, right? Mm-hmm. And so it could be the case that somebody is raising the content of what it is that they're saying is maybe right, or let's just say is arguable. But if their intent is malicious, then that does have to be considered along with what you do with the content, at least. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's an interesting point. And you're right. I do think that there are that, put it this way, I could say I think that the Robert E. Lee statue should come down in public places, and I just mentioned why in terms of what it represents, public spaces versus private, and so forth. A person from Antifa could say, I think that Robert E. Lee should be torn down in public spaces, and I mean something like my intent is very different from that person from Antifa. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because their interest is, if not anarchy, something pretty close to it. Right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the content might be the same, but yeah, you're right. The intent is very different. Mm-hmm. And I do think that thoughtful people, I think you're probably right about that we have to consider, okay, well, what are we going to do with this information? What are we going to do with this problem that's being raised? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
All right. I'll take this last little comment here because I think it sums up that I think a lot of the disagreement comes from people who can't see anything from anyone else's perspective. So that's one, and then here's another example of people just misunderstanding what we're saying. So holy moly's.
All right, if I could just let you guys do those last couple ones on your own, I need to get out of here, guys.
No one likes you anyway.
I'll catch you later, all right, man. Subscribe to the channel. God bless.
The link to Vocab's channel is in the description box, everyone. And peace. Last comment here. Holy Moly's Donut Shop says, I love you guys' content, but by your logic, you have to stop doing your parody videos. So notice here the misunderstanding. Holy Moly's Donut Shop here must have interpreted us as saying, if something hurts someone's feelings, then you need to stop or tear it down. If what you're doing is hurting someone's feeling, and therefore if a statue is hurting someone's feelings, then you need to tear it down. And if your team name is hurting someone's feelings, then you need to take it down. But your guys' parody videos are hurting people's feelings, and therefore you need to stop them. No, not what we're saying at all, right? This is the United States of America. You have every right to criticize and mock things that are deserving of criticism and mockery. And when we go through Islam and our the parody videos we make, we are deliberately making fun of things that are stupid and need to be made fun of. That is very different from naming your team something that now, even though it may not have originally been this way, but now at least is offensive to a lot of people. If your intention is to mock them because they are worthy of being mocked and deserve to be mocked, well, that would be one thing. But you're a team. Your intention is not to mock. The intention of that team name has never been to mock. So if people are offended by that and your goal and you're not trying to offend them, then if it's enough people who aren't simply responding in an outraged culture, then that's something you should be listening to. If you have a statue that is celebrating Robert E. Lee, well, if your intention were for some reason to mock people, if you wanted to build it to mock people for some reason, that would be one thing, but it's not. It's there to celebrate. It's there to honor Robert E. Lee. And so if that's your intention, the question is, why are you doing that? And is that something people want to support? That's very, 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 very different from, this is extremely silly and we want to mock this. And we don't care if people get offended by this because this needs to be said, even if it hurts people's feelings. Those are completely different situations there. All right, final thoughts on any of.
Well, actually, can I say something on that?
You
right
can
quick?
totally say.
I mean, so to your point too. So the other, I've mentioned it like 3 times now, but the Native American gentleman that I was talking to, he was kind of schooling me on his perspective about the Washington name. So I'm kind of able to glean from that, and broaden my understanding and make some more informed decisions. In your case, dealing with Muslims, right? You've been able to communicate with former Muslims, people who are engaged in your work and so forth, and be like, man, you know what? Actually, and I learned this from you that when you have somebody who from a Arab or Muslim background, they believe that the harder you go for something, that's indicative that you really believe it, that you have this strong conviction. You know what I'm saying? So how you come across really matters. And so for them, some of the former Muslims, I'm sure you have many emails to prove it, but you're going about it the right way, right? So it's not that you want to have like some sort of situational ethics type of a thing. But at the same time, it does matter in terms of who it is that you're dealing with and what the intent is behind what it is that you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like Jesus told, the woman, I think she was a Phoenician woman, was like, yo, you're a dog. You know what I'm saying? He referred to her as a dog. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, he was God. I mean, I'm sure I'll just leave the theological aspect of it, but he elicited a response from her that was faith-filled, right? You know what I'm saying? Now, ultimately, he didn't do her any harm by making that statement. Likewise with John the Baptist, he referred to people as brood of vipers, right? He didn't do them a disservice in doing that. He was just calling out their behavior. So you can be offensive and not sinful, right? And so I think that people just need to go ahead and take that into account. But then again, this is why we have these discussions so that we can really work our way through some of these important nuances.
Yeah, and what's interesting is just that how many people misinterpreted things in the same way. Look, here you have, how is David, cookies in the breast milk wood, really up here talking about not offending people? I am totally up for offending people if you're supposed to be offending them, right? If there's something that you need to be offended over, right? If it's look, check this out. Robert B. again here says the intent was not racist. So he's on the Redskins again. The intent was not racist. Suck it up, Buttercup. That's the fact that matters. Notice Robert B.'s position here. All that matters is your intent. Nothing else matters. So just imagine, Adam, you come from another country where the N-word means something completely different from what it means here because it's a different language. And suppose you name your sports team the such and such N-words, and then your team moves to the United States where that has a different meaning. According to Robert B., your intention was not bad, and therefore you should never change your name, even though everyone from that time on is gonna hear your team name.
I got a funny story about that, a real life story. That could be real quick with you. So I was flying back. As a matter of fact, I think I was flying back from South Carolina. We was up there recently, right? So I'm flying back home, right? Actually, I was coming back from Nebraska. So I'm sitting next to this guy. He's a Christian and everything, older gentleman, and we strike up a conversation. I realized he knows the Lord, and and we have a great conversation, man. He's Caucasian gentleman, and we're just talking about stuff, right? And he was telling me he's like some kind of missionary or something like that, and he's showing me some pictures of people that he met, from his missionary work and so on and so forth. And there was this one guy, well, I guess we refer to him as white, but he was from Prague or something like that, and I guess we would. If you saw him on the street, you probably would think that he was a white dude. Now, this guy's probably about 15, 16 or whatever. And in Prague, he loved Martin Luther King. I guess he got a hold of some Martin Luther King literature and, loved Martin Luther King. And so somehow he ends up in America, with this group, with this missionary group. And they were doing a salute to different historical figures. He wanted to do something for Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. And so he decided to paint his face and skin black. And perform the I Have a Dream speech, at this thing. And so the dude is like, yeah, see it. And the guy shows me the picture. He's like, man, what do you think about this? This is all right, right? And I'm like, I mean, his intent wasn't to be offensive, but in this context, that probably wasn't the best idea. Yeah. Now, did he mean anything about it? No. I wouldn't be mad at the guy. But that's an educational opportunity where you say, you know what, I understand what you meant by it, But you probably ought not to go about it by honoring Dr. King in that particular way by putting on blackface or something.
Yeah, so that's a situation. That's a situation where you can say your intent matters. Your intent matters.
Does matter.
Yeah. Right. If we know what your intent is, your intent was to insult versus your intent was to honor. Either way, you did something offensive. Yeah, we definitely take your intent into account. But it's not all that matters, right? You do have to be aware if you're doing something that has an impact on people that you're not aware of, or that people are going to interpret it in a way that you didn't intend. Robert B. apparently thinks that doesn't matter, and so if you had a team that came here from a different place and it was named the N-words, he thinks, nope, you just keep it, and who cares about anyone else? The only person who could ever find it distasteful would be a radical SJW.
SJW.
These guys are hilarious because
funny,
these are like, these guys have the same mindset as like Antifa. Anyone who disagrees with me about anything, I must destroy it and complain about it.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, and maybe one extra nuance we could add, and I think what we mean is you don't want to offend people unnecessarily. I mean, like just do it just cause. Yep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of where people are coming from. Where we're coming from.
Yeah. All right. So
that's good, man.
I'll just say two things here at the end, and then you can give your final thoughts, Adam. But on the issue of race, my goodness, this should be obvious to every kid. I understand that our brains are sort of wired to put people in categories and stuff like that, and there are categories. The easiest categories to put people into are like male and female, black, white, things like that. Those are easier for the mind to get around. But then to go and base your worldview on some of those distinctions. I mean, of all the things that you could base your worldview and your concerns about the world on, that the amount of melanin, we have the same substance in our skin. It's melanin, right? And some people have more melanin, and so they're darker brown, and some have a little bit of melanin, and so they're light skinned, and some people are in the middle. To say, that's our, that's how we're going to set up our worldview based on those distinctions. I'd say that's it's completely moronic. So that's one thing. The other thing is, early on, I talked about how this is how people are being manipulated based on this, right? You have various groups that want to divide up people. You have white supremacists and white nationalists who want to keep people separate. You also have people from other groups that want to keep people separated. This is kind of your last stand right now, at least in the West, because people are becoming so mixed up that 40, 50 years from now, it's impossible, right? You're gonna have a total spectrum. You're gonna have dark on one side, light on one side, and you're just gonna have degrees in the middle. You're gonna have everything in between. It's very hard at that point to say, all right, we're gonna separate people based on race. So the people who really, really want to keep people divided, this is kind of their last chance. But I'll say this: there are other people who, if your political movement if you sort of draw your power of your movement from racial tension and racial division, because you're the group that's supposedly going to go and solve all of these problems, sometimes it's not actually in your best interest to solve those problems, because that's where you draw your support and strength from. So I just want everyone to be aware that when someone is coming to you saying, hey, I'm the group that solves this problem, so support me, and they're the same people that are stirring up the tension the most, just proceed cautiously. And this is not just one group. Everyone does this, right? Everyone's group is the group that's going to fix that problem and protect you. Well, you need to watch that, because think about this. We talked about this earlier, how, at my wife's parents' generation, they were the first generation that could have an interracial marriage. They passed the law and they got married. So they got married. They were a mixed race couple. Now you get to the level of the grandkids, and we have three races at the family cookouts. We have black, white, and Asian all at the same cookout. That is lightning speed for change in a society. So think about that. If things are changing that rapidly, from the grandparents were not allowed to get married until the law changed, until now, when all the races are being mixed together, that is lightning speed. If you're looking at that, you're thinking, wow, a generation or two from now, we're going to be so mixed up. It's going to be hard to, be that divided. If your political movement, if your political system, if you're the group that draws its strength and support from racial tensions, this is kind of your last chance to jump into action, because guess what, 20, 30 years from now, if no one's really upset because we don't have these black, white, this, that, if you don't have that anymore, then what's the need for your group anymore? And you should be in panic mode. We either have to completely take over right now, or we might not get a chance 10, 20 years from now. So whatever the group is that's saying, I'm going to solve your problem, always, because we do want to solve problems. We do want our leaders. We vote people into power because we believe they're going to fix problems. But always be on the lookout for people who are really trying to solve the problem, and people who want to stir up the problem because they're the ones you turn to when you're concerned about the problem. So just make sure that the people you choose are doing what you want them to do and not the opposite of what you want them to do, because they want to make you more dependent on them. So those are my thoughts. At the end of the day, I'm just against people being manipulated by our leaders and by the media and by everyone else. So those are my thoughts. Adam.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So I'm going to just say out front that I think that one of the biggest problems that we have today is that that Christians, have abdicated their place. They've evacuated from the public square in terms of starting from biblical axioms, starting from a biblical position on what it is that's going on in the world, and bringing what we have within the biblical worldview to the public square to say, okay, now here's what the answers are. Rather than that, we've actually been like the caboose, right? We've actually been kind of playing catch up, whereas people in the world are framing all these issues for us, and then we're trying to make sense of it from a biblical lens. We had it backwards. You know what I'm saying? I think what we need to be doing is, and this is why my issue, I have nothing against Nick Cannon personally, but for me, he's an influencer who's putting bad ideas out there, right? And we need to be about the business of confronting bad ideas. I'm saying I'm unapologetically proud to be a Christian. I'm unapologetically proud to be an African American. I'm saying this is how God made me. He placed me within this context. And I think that means something. I have a responsibility then to exemplify the best of what the gospel is within this context. Now, for me, what that means is when I see ideas coming in that will destroy that, then, that are anti-biblical, I've got to confront it, right? This is what we ought to be doing. You know what I'm saying? This is actually, I think it's a living out of the second commandment, right? If I love somebody, if I love my neighbor, and I see that there are worldviews and ideologies that people are being subjected to that are anti their well-being, if I love that person, I'm gonna do something about it, right? I'm gonna confront it with truth. And so I think that's what we need to be about. And the other side of it is I think that conversations like these need to happen more. Like we need to have Christians talking these things out in public. That's what we need to have. And because this is the best, this right here is the best opportunity that our country has to ever get over whatever this is, in regard to race, racism, and what have you. This right here is the best opportunity we have. I'm saying, like, Dave, I just met you. I guess it's been maybe two and a half years ago now. You know what I'm saying? We don't come from the same background. We don't come from the same place, but we're two brothers in Christ, right? Obviously have different melanin counts, you know what I'm saying? Different cultural experiences, who are able to come together and talk these things out, right? Because we have this overarching unity in Christ, and we're willing to submit our ideas to reason, truth and reason, right? This is the best opportunity that our country has, right? And so without that, without Christians stepping up and saying, hey, this is what the biblical ethic looks like, here's how it plays out in the real world, this is what we ought to hold our society to. Without Christians doing that, then there is no hope for our society. I'm saying Christians have to take the lead. We got to stop being that caboose. And so, that's my thing, man. So, I talk a lot about this stuff, on my channel, Tru-ID, Apologetics. Y'all definitely check me out. That's Tru-ID Apologetics. And, that's all I got, man.
Yeah. And, guys, just think about our history here. Had a big civil war over an issue, fought, got past it, moved forward, made things better. Women couldn't vote. Had big disputes over that. Fixed it. Got better. Had segregation. Got past it. Got better. The system is designed to improve. Whereas right now you have people pushing further apart. In fact, as far as like Congress and so on, this is the most. The recent statistics are that this is the most polarized the United States Congress has ever been. Right, and so this record was set under Trump. The record broke an earlier record under Donald Trump, which broke an earlier record set under the administration of Barack Obama. And if you look at the most polarized the United States has been since the early 1900s, the most polarized has been under Donald Trump, Barack Obama, George W. Bush. And what that means is it's not simply the leader, it's just society as a whole is becoming more polarized. And so, guys, I can't emphasize this enough. When someone says something you disagree with, I understand if someone is a lunatic or if someone is just a horrible person, you have to just say, no, you're a horrible person trying to destroy everything. No, I'm not listening to you, right? When someone simply has something, a view that you disagree with, try to get your minds around why that person thinks that way and whether that person has a point, even if at the end of the day you disagree with the person's, with the outcome. That's what will help. And so, at the end of the day, we have these various banners that we can unite under. We can say, hey, we disagree, but we're Christians. We disagree, but we're Americans, right? And so we have to be.
And to put a scripture to it, be slow to speak and quick to listen.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so,
it's in the Bible.
And so I agree with you, Adam, that, this is the time, right? The point is, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at this is the most polarized we've been since the early 1900s. We look around, and I think what's driving a lot of the anxiety and so on is just it looks, if you love America, you see it being leveled, right? And if you hate America, you want it to be leveled. And so you have these like diametrically opposed positions and so on, and they're just pulling everyone. They're pulling everyone to the extreme. But guess what? If we can actually get past that, well, that's great, right? That's great. If we get, and if we can't, then we're just totally screwed.
We're doomed.
Yeah. So, I agree with Adam that we should be discussing this issue. So Adam, maybe we'll start getting together with the crew and start discussing all the most controversial issues of the week.
Right. By the end of it, we'll all be Marxists and Heil Hitler and all that.
And what's cool is even the people in the chat who are flipping out. I can't believe, David, you criticize Islam. I thought you agreed with me on everything. How could you disagree with me on this? What's cool is maybe people will start to get past that. And hey, I agree with you on these 3 things, and I disagree with you on these two things. But we agree on some important things, and so we can disagree on these things. Maybe we can get to that point. And I think that would be cool. All right, thanks. Thanks to Adam. And just by the way, everyone, Adam's link to Adam's channel is in the description box. Link to Vocab's channel is in the description box. Link to John McCray's channel in the description box. We're all friends, and we get together when we can, have discussions like this, and so check out their channels. And especially, again, they all just posted they all recently posted a video on the Nick Cannon issue, and so I'm sure we'll all be posting more stuff because the issues never stop. They just keep coming. All right. So, till next time. Catch y'all later.